Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Board of Supervisors regular meeting of March the 27th, 2023 in beautiful King William County. Chris, will you call a roll?
Mr. Miskowski,
Here.
Mr. Greenwood,
Here.
Mr. Garber,
Here.
Mr. Moran,
Here.
Chairman Hodges.
Here. We don't need electronic participation. Moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would rise. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, Ladies and gentlemen, have y'all reviewed the meeting agenda and do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
Second. Any discussion? Ms. Brand?
Mr. Greenwood,
Aye.
Mr. Garber,
Aye.
Mr. Moran,
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski,
Aye.
Chairman Hodges.
Here. Aye, I should say. Citizens' comment period is one opportunity of 3 minutes per individual on non-public hearing matters. Do you want to read?
It's the policy of the board that its meetings be conducted with the highest degree of order and decorum. The board's integrity and dignity will be established and maintained at all times during the conduct of public business, and the board will permit no behavior which is not in keeping with this policy. The soliciting of funds from meeting attendees, the use of threatening or profane language, the failure to comply with time limits, violation of board rules, or other forms of disruptive conduct will not be tolerated. The chair will maintain proper order at all times during all meetings of the board and shall effect the removal from any meeting of any person guilty of improper conduct if the offending party fails or refuses to cease such conduct. Speakers wishing to address the board shall clearly state their name. All comments are addressed to the chair. Speakers may address only those matters within the scope of the board's authority that are not on the agenda for a public hearing or for this meeting. Speakers are allowed one opportunity of 3 minutes and may not yield any portion of their time to another. Political campaigning, advertising of goods and or services, and the like are prohibited. No speaker is to engage in political statements, personal attacks upon members of the Board of Supervisors, county employees or officials, or any other person. Use abusive language, discuss matters outside the purview of the board, or publicly discuss matters the board has solely considered in a closed meeting. Clearly state your position, give the facts to substantiate your position, and state the concerns you wish the Board of Supervisors to consider. If you have a written statement, handout, or other supporting material, hand it to the clerk, which is me. Do not hand materials to the individual supervisors. If you have not had an opportunity to sign up, there's a sign-up sheet. If your name is not on the sign-up sheet, you won't be called.
Chris, as a few more people came in behind you. Just check with them, please.
The very first one is Sharon Landrum from District 5.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to raise awareness of the brokenness of the Pamunkey Regional Library system, of which King William citizens support with their hard-earned taxpayer dollars. Having been to the last several meetings of the PRL board, I've personally witnessed that they do not listen to nor are accountable to King William citizens. Time and again, concerned citizens have expressed their desire to simply develop a labeling and sequestering policy for sexually explicit material for children. However, they have ignored our common sense request. 9 out of 12 public comments at the last meeting and the majority in past meetings support a policy change, yet they were collectively dismissed. At this last meeting, a Hanover Library board member suggested that the board adopt that they would not knowingly order a sexually explicit book for juveniles. The board refused to adopt that measure or any of our common sense and decency requests. We're not asking for censorship or banning, something the other side loves to threaten. We're simply asking to protect our precious children. For those who are unaware of the hidden hands behind our library, several federal and state organizations directly influence our local library with their policies, the American Library Association and the Virginia Library Association. The Marxist woke ALA receives major funding from the Gates Foundation and George Soros's Open Society. The VLA has an LGBTQ and Librarians of Color forum from which they receive revenue and influence. The VLA Legislative Committee just recently rejoiced that state bills to hold libraries accountable were defeated in the legislature. Tom Shepley, who is speaking here tonight, is the chair of the VLA Legislative Committee, as well as a longtime member of ALA, and is directly responsible for the effort to undermine the people's voice. Is this director and board representative of us, King William citizens? In addition, these two well-funded, unaccountable, and unelected institutions, the VLA and the ALA, do not represent our locality, and yet they are directing our local library, for whom our tax-paying dollars support to the tune of $574,000 this year and over $600,000 next year. Are King William citizens okay with an unelected, authoritarian library board, director, and library associations turning a deaf ear to the pleas of well-meaning families who are merely trying to protect their innocent children, all the while using the family's hard-earned tax dollars to further their agenda? I think not.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Dorothy Wassenberg from District 4. This is a book that's currently in our public library in the Pamunkey Regional System. I'm going to read you a few excerpts from it just to let you know. This book is geared to 8, 9, and 10-year-olds. So please listen to what I have to say. You know that everyone says you cannot judge a book by its cover. It means you can't tell what's inside the book if you don't open the cover up and read about it. It's like our bodies. You can't judge a body by its cover because we cover it with clothes, right? That's what we're talking about here. We all think, okay, sex is a funny thing, but is it really? We're all naked underneath when we're born. We know that. There's times that we were born that way and we want to stay that way. But having a bath and changing our clothes was a thing that we did with growing society. It's good to know about your body parts too. But do 8, 9, and 10-year-olds need to have explicit mentions of their body parts? The parts that we have, some of them are private. We don't really want to talk about the middle part of our bodies a lot of times because it's age inappropriate. Most bodies all have nipples. This is direct quotes from this book. That's why I brought the book instead of writing my own notes, which I did originally. Everybody usually has 2 nipples. They come in shapes and sizes and colors. Some are sensitive, some are not. Some have breasts. That's what we call them instead of bodies. As puberty comes, we develop and continue to grow. Now, if you're a male, you don't necessarily have the breasts, but you do have penises, quote unquote, in this book for 8, 9, and 10-year-olds. If you have one, you might have noticed sometimes it's soft and bendy, and other times it becomes hard like an erection. Is this really what we want to talk about with our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders? I don't think so, but it goes on to say, who has what? We have middle parts. Everybody's curious about what these are. But having a penis doesn't necessarily make you a boy or a girl, right? you could have a vulva and then you would be a girl. But all these things can be changed with today's style and the way things are going. These are not the things that we want our children to know about. Sometimes you're curious about yourself, so young children touch themselves. This goes on to talk about what masturbation is and what a great feeling it can give you when you do that. Now, honestly, guys, as we get older, we think, this is not what I grew up with. I certainly hope that you don't have this thought when you grew up, when you were 8 years old. That was not something we should have been talking about. Most people talk about relationships between men and women. We know that's not necessarily true today anymore. Words are important to everyone, and it helps if we get to choose what we call people, male, female, or anyone else. We can all be whatever we want to be today. But I think that's for us to decide, and it's not to be put in the books in our libraries. This book ends with the sentence at the very end of the book that says, you have the right to be bisexual, gay, straight, lesbian, asexual, queer, or any one of the things that you would like to be. And in case you don't know what they mean, go to the glossary in the back of the book and it will give you a definition.
Time.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Next is Elaine Daniel of District 5.
Good evening. My name is Elaine Daniel. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the children of our county and our country. Our children are our future, and the future seems troubling. But there's always hope. When you ask yourself, what is really important in life, and what do we need to teach our children, we began to be able to focus and to see where we should go. So how do we meet the needs of the children in our day's society? What is it they need to be emotionally and physically healthy and to be happy? Let's start with what information we are putting into their minds, into their brains on a daily basis. I'm sure you're all familiar with the adage, you are what you eat. And we see statistics about what's going on in America today in that regard. But I want to create another adage. You are what you think and what you experience. The rise in mental illness in teens in our country today is astounding. In 2021, 4 in 10 felt persistently sad. 1/3 experienced poor mental health. And in February of this year, it was reported that suicide was the second leading cause of death among people 15 to 24. And nearly 20% of high school students reported serious thoughts of suicide, and 9% have actually made an attempt to do so. These are concerning statistics, concerning to us in our community, to our leaders, to our teachers, and mostly to our family members. So what do these statistics tell us? It tells us that something is missing, something is wrong, and that we as parents and educators need to move in the direction to find out just what we can do to help. So let's talk about what we're feeding our children emotionally. I have a book with me. It's called Me, Earl, and a Dying Girl. And this book, the characters in this book are neurotic. They are nihilist. They think nothing is important, nothing matters, and the thing that they can focus on is destruction. So why would we offer such a book as this? We don't want to ban books, but we don't want to buy books that have no good purpose. I'd like to challenge each one of you to read this book. I read it. I've only read parts of it because it's not very pleasant. And I would like for you.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, time is up.
Okay,
I think we did get your message.
I hope so. But I say 2 other things. I would like very much. We know that children are
I can't let
very
you go
important.
any
That's
further.
it?
That's it.
That's it. Okay.
Thank
I need to talk faster, right?
you. That's right.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
If you have a cell phone, please put it on silent. Next on the list is Rosemary Berberich from District 4.
Good evening. I'm Rose Marie, and I'm here tonight to discuss one of the obscene books in our Pamunkey Regional Library System. It is titled Looking for Alaska by John Green. This is the book. I don't know if any of you all are familiar with it or what, but controversy around this book comes from pages that describe in detail graphic descriptions of a sex scene between minors. Some parents are calling it pornographic. We, as a public library system, must hold ourselves to a standard of decency and appropriateness for all. This book should be labeled and placed in a separate area in the library due to the profanity and sexually explicit scenes. I hope the board would consider defunding the Pamunkey Regional Library funds until changes are made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Rose Bloomfield of District 3.
Good evening. Rose Bloomfield. I have been given this book called The Last Night at Telegraph Club. It's it's pornographic literature as far as I'm concerned. And I don't know why they gave it to me, except that the book is written and speaking about the 1970s in Chicago, in the Chinese, in Chinatown and with the Chinese culture. I happen to have lived in San Francisco at that time and been great friends with a number of Chinese people there. This writer, by the way, I would give her an A in sentence preparation, in continuity, in flow, in her use of vocabulary, but her use of content is disgusting. And again, this book is for young adults. I have a whole thing written about it, a whole thing that came from the book itself, and it would show you very well just how good a writer she is. But as I said, her context is not exactly what I'd want to see. This is something that should be held outright, not put on a district, not put on any kind of shelving that doesn't have a disclaimer to it. It doesn't have a red X in front of it. I was talking recently about something that happened that I would remember, my age, and a few of you who are here and older. When I was younger, there was a book called Lady Chatterley's Lover. And I hear a few giggles, yes. I never read the book, but the entire country, and in fact, a good deal of the world, because I was in Europe, was it was just, everything was closed down. Lady Chatterley's Lover had the entire country, almost the entire world, banning pornographic literature. I don't know how we strayed so far from the banning, but I'd like to see it come back again. Not exclusively, it should be available, but I think it should be definitely have a big red X on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And remember Lady Chatterley's Lover.
Trudy Montagnoli from District 4.
First, let me be clear. This is not about banning books. Concerned ordinary citizens speaking out against sexually explicit books are accused at book challenges of being homophobic, transphobic, or marginalizing groups of people. In reality, the marginalized group of people seems to be the conservative majority of concerned citizens of King William. It's alarming that the library websites have so many resources for their librarians to fight against the unprecedented book challenges under the guise of intellectual freedom. There's a huge difference between free access and common sense protection. Public libraries across the country have been infiltrated by extremist social activists who are pushing their ideological agenda and, yes, grooming children to be open to sexual fetishes at a young, impressionable age. If the word grooming is somehow offensive, okay, let's call it influencing. Young people are naturally curious, and constant, consistent, and excessive exposure to unusual and unconventional sexual orientations is influencing their perceptions. People come to these meetings and read these graphic books content, not just to shock you, but because most of the citizens, and maybe some of you board members, don't even know that they're in their libraries. The Internet Safety Policy of September 2021 has clear terms defining what's harmful to minors. Any picture that depicts, describes, represents actual simulated, normal, or perverted sex acts. Okay, why can't we use that same standard with books that are openly displayed? Secondly, and more importantly to me, where's the balance of offering something for everyone? On the Pamunkey Regional Library website, I searched just the word conservative under young adult, and the top 5 results were 5 novels about gay and lesbian teens. Now, I don't care if you want your teens to read these books, but conservative viewpoint in all 5 of these books is depicted in a negative way and considered wrong. The public library clearly no longer represents my marginalized group, and I no longer support funding them with my taxes. I could show you the pictures in here. They're graphic and they're pornographic.
Thank you.
Bob Earhart, District 5.
Next. Good evening. Mr. Hodges, Mr. Miskalski, I know you're both familiar with baseball. It was a baseball metaphor. I guess I'm the closer this evening. This book in particular from the West Point Libraries, you both have children at or near the teenage age. Which is this accessible for? So you should have copies of my comments, which I'm going to read from. This is from A Court of Wings. And if you find this offensive, maybe you'll understand why some of the parents don't want their children reading this in public libraries where they have unfettered access. "You're taking too long," he said, jerking his chin towards the bath. My breast tightened at the slight growl lacing his words. He watched that too. Rhys made a low noise that sounded vaguely like a whimper as he took my bare torso. He took my breasts, now heaving and aching badly enough that I wanted to swallow my plea for the bath entirely. I smirked, daring a look at his pants, at the evidence of what exactly this was doing to him, pressing against the black material with impressive demand. I simply crooned, "Too bad there's not room in the tub for 2. A design flaw that I will remedy tomorrow," his voice quickly and roughly quieted as he slid invisible hands down my breast between my legs. I might have taken longer washing certain areas, and I made sure he saw it. You've heard from concerned citizens tonight, mothers, fathers, those outraged that despite 2 public hearings where citizens have spoken against the Pamunkey Regional Library adopting a policy. The library trustee board still adopted the chose that policy, which lacks a common sense approach to limiting access to material, which could be considered offensive and pornographic. Both Representatives Mary Shipman and John Edwards sat stoic while 6 King William taxpayers requested book labels and limited access. They continued to support a policy which allows unfettered access to the minors for material in print. This is a teen book that I just read from. At the March 24th Pamunkey Regional Library, even the Hanover County Deputy Administrator, Mr. Taylor, stated, "We want our libraries to be welcoming to all customers and also believe materials needs to be in the appropriate places in the library. Lately, I'm afraid we're losing trust. We encourage you to develop policies that allow parents to be more informed." Yet the library trustee board did not do so. Labeling printed material and restricting access, such as Henrico has done, consistent with the public internet policy. Where has the board of
Time.
supervisors been hiding?
Thank you.
Tim Vaughn of District 5.
Good evening, Tim Vaughn, Fifth District. While I wasn't able to attend the Board of Supervisors meeting on February 27th, I did watch the YouTube video. I would like to specifically speak to commentary during the supervisor's comment period. Oath is defined as a solemn appeal to a deity or to some revered person or thing to witness one's determination to speak the truth, to keep a promise. I served 22 years in the United States Navy, during which I took 4 oaths of enlistment, 3 oaths of office after commissioning as an officer. I was privileged enough to also issue the oaths of office to both of my sons, one as he commissioned into the Marine Corps, the other into the Coast Guard. I was further honored to be asked by many of the sailors I either led or served with to issue their oaths of enlistment. That experience has given me a unique perspective on the entire concept of taking an oath in association with public service. That experience has solidified in me the conviction that your word is quite literally your bond and your sacred honor. It is a commitment to uphold the tenets of that oath, regardless of its impact to your own wants, desires, or preferences. In a case of a political office, it goes hand in hand with the fact that you were elected to represent everyone in your district, whether they voted for you or not, whether you like them or not, whether they called you names or not. When your oath applies is not something you get to pick and choose. You can't set it aside based on convenience or whether someone was mean to you. Concerned citizens who have lost faith in their elected representatives and then find ways to express those concerns have been closed to them or not available are not the problem today. Instead of disparaging citizens who raise concerns about how well their government is functioning or coming up with ways to stifle those concerns, try addressing them directly, transparently, completely, and publicly. In the future, focus more on your core duties and drive the administration to function smoothly and efficiently. Ensure your administrator is setting clear objectives and goals for each department so that the departments are taking the actions on a day-to-day basis that leads to a government that county citizens can have faith and trust in. A county government that citizens believe is acting as good stewards of both the dollars they collect as well as the faith entrusted in them. That will do more to restore trust in government than disparaging concerned citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica McLean, District 5.
Good evening, Board. Jessica McLean, Fifth District. At the last King William Board of Supervisors meeting, myself and 11 individuals used their constitutional rights to speak up in the public comment section and did so based on the FOIA evidence provided by the county and evidence from key players in the King William government.
Let's look at the shameful response by Supervisor Travis Miskowski's, whose public comments disparaged his constituents with his demeaning remarks. Mr. Chairman, you allowed this member to state, "It's because you get disgusting displays like that. Cherry pick quotes, twisted information, unsubstantiated accusations that they never do circle back around to give it any evidence as to why they make that accusation," which is a false statement. The fact is, this board was asked to allow a presentation on the FOIA analysis and its findings, but the board denied this request. And instead of a back and forth dialogue, the board chose to publicly humiliate their constituents without providing any evidence of their own to support their unfounded claims. Mr. Chairman, you further allowed the member to humiliate citizens speaking when he labeled us as nothing but conspiracists, fabricators, or our own power hungry. We're power hungry ourselves. These are the kind of words we hear being used by the woke left against conservatives all the time. Mr. Chairman, I think all of you should take heed to Supervisor Miskowski's words and look in a mirror, because it's all of you who want to pull the wool over our eyes. By the way, we are following the money because we believe that you are power hungry, so power hungry that you're trying to cover up your inability to balance the checkbook and all of the material mismanagement we have found so far. Mr. Chairman, the people know this board would like to change this form of government. You wish to do so that you could remove the checks and balances of our constitutional government. You have no right to control the constitutional officers, and your covert attempt shows the deceitful nature of your conduct in the matter. We can see through your blatant attempts at misinformation, division, and the chaos you all created to cover up your material mismanagement. We have watched and suffered your ineptitude and inability to run this county with transparency and in the best interest of us, the taxpayer. So when the supervisor says, "Bring it on," if you've got all this information, bring it on, challenge accepted, because we know what this board has done. We know the legacy of this board, and we will continue to bring sunlight to your activities. And Mr. Chairman, when the supervisor states, "I'm not going to bow down to some loons," well, the people want you to know that you represent us. You are there for us. And above all, the people of King William County elected you to bow down and serve the people.
Time.
That's what an elected official
Time.
should do. Thank you.
Scott Wassenberg, District 4.
Robert Hughes, District 2. Pardon?
Scott Wassenberg, District 4. History of the books in King William. History of King William finances goes all the way back to 1980s, reemerging in 2020. On the front page of everyone's paper, this problem was exacerbated by the media circus and finger pointing of the former county administrator and the current finance director. It is clear from the FOIA research that public statements on reconciliation being accomplished is contrary to the findings. What keeps this critical piece of county finances from being accomplished? The county website states the vision of the finance department: provide King William County with fiscal leadership, expert advice, and advocates financial integrity and accountability in county government while maintaining the public trust from the responses, and most so, the non-responsive FOIA research. This statement is a farce. Administration has failed to employ people with required resume and qualifications for the finance staff positions. There is no room for an on-job training with the known challenges facing the finances of this county. This has crippled the ability of the finance department to properly administer their duties, to work cooperatively with the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer. This board has allowed gamemanship to govern activities and interactions of the administration and the constitutional officers. The constant one-upmanship practiced and publicly stated by finance staff has deterred them from their real job to foster a system of controls to protect the county's financial resources. One of the largest problems found is a lack of a clean reconciliation prior to loading the county finances to new financial software. The decision was made before the new council officers were board and on up to speed. The old phrase garbage in, garbage out is an inherent problem. The county administration broke industry standards by not allowing the legacy system to run simultaneously until both were reporting effectively and consistently and reconciliations were complete. Instead, the decision was made to decommission the legacy system after 30 days, highlighting another failed attempt. An example, the best practices are not in place. The board and its administration is known of this issue, as both the commissioner of revenue and the former treasurer fought to keep them both to no avail. The finance director and administration shut down the previous application, knowing full well of the implication. Doing so makes reconciliation impossible. The board allows the use of simple spreadsheets to conduct reconciliation, which isolates the finances from others, which is not in keeping with other localities or its stated provisions on the county website. The former treasurer wasn't able to reconcile in the software, even with help from other treasurers that came to assist and were familiar with the systems, because the data is such a mess. Thank you.
Robert Hughes, District 2.
Mr. Chairman, citizens of King William want to know what you are hiding from us. Why does this administration continue to make it difficult for the people of the county to get information they have a right to know? Have all of you and your administration forgotten who you work for? Your attitude and actions show you obviously have forgotten that you work for us, the people. When you moved the reconciliation of the books to finance, was this so you could cover up the failings of the inept finance department? When you demeaned and attacked constitutional officers, wasn't this a veiled attempt to keep from disclosure the issues that you knew could jeopardize a grant from the internet? Was this not a power constellation so the board could hide from the people its failed finance policies and practices? Was the power grab some of you sought nothing more than a piece of the puzzle to cover up of irreconcilable accounts, and that all of our county finances are done on a spreadsheet after we paid $140,000 for the financial software? Mr. Chairman, what are the qualifications to work in finance? From what we know about the resumes of the staff, we could and you should do better when you hire. How do we allow you to stay in these seats when you cannot manage our money? Why do you treat us like we work for you when indeed it's the other way around? Why do you fail us at every turn? What are you hiding from us?
Linda Benson, District 2.
We as taxpayers are beginning to wonder if the five of you and your administration understand the words other people's money. Do you think money grows on trees? The taxpayers' money surely does not, and that is where we have a problem. All of you and your cohorts will roll your eyes and moan, not Sands Anderson's invoices again. But unfortunately for you, it's about those bills and more. While reviewing the FOIA responses, these bills or services as county attorney are disturbing in cost and time spent. More so, the issue is for services the King William Board of Supervisors and its administration are openly paying them for. A quick review of attorney billing for the last 12 months showed the following: $9,200 in charges for driving to and from King William to attend meetings. $5,000 to recommend, develop, and repeal a dangerous dog ordinance, all within 3 months. $4,600 for research to abolish the treasurer and commissioner of the revenue offices. $4,500 to review FOIA requests and county responses. $1,700 to provide advice on buying tax delinquent property by Board of Supervisor members. When the taxpayers find all these problems just from our legal bills, what else do we not know about? So here's the fix. You write a personal check every time you want to play politics. You write a personal check every time you want to get the county attorney to review FOIA requests, deny information to the people, and violate FOIA law. You write a personal check every time you want to take away from the citizens the constitutional protections of checks and balances. We'll look at the invoices, add it all up, and come back next month with the amount owed. And the 5 of you can each pay your share back to the taxpayer to be used for things really needed in this county. Thank you.
Mary Sue Bancroft, District 5.
Good evening. $3.9 million should be invested in our kids. Recent FOIA request information for the school's reconciliation showed $3.9 million in an adjusting entry carried each month from February 2021 forward as owed to schools from operating funds. Yet the funds didn't reflect on the county operating reconciliation as owed to the schools in reverse. If you're going to carry an adjusting entry, there needs to be an equal entry on the opposite side. What makes up that $3.9 million? What GL report can be provided to support such an amount? When I was attempting to reconcile the school's bank account Edmonds, I concluded there was a difference of about $3.9 million. Whereas the person who worked in the school finance office at that time estimated the difference was about $4 million. That's according to her email to me. You may FOIA that. She and I had already concluded the difference, yet you authorized and paid VML Vaco John Montoro $35,000 only to discover the exact same thing. Why is $3.9 million still sitting in the county operating account when it belongs to the school? The funds need to be transferred into the school's bank account, or better yet, the funds need to be transferred into an instrument whereby more interest can be earned than what's being paid on the operating account. This amount of money could likely be earning 1% higher than the standard deposit accounts. I personally encourage the treasurer to go ahead and transfer those funds to a higher earning instrument as soon as possible. The latest county administration report reflects a healthy reserve of $3.9 million through the split levy funding for the schools. Again, where is the general ledger report to support this amount? From what I saw in Edmonds when I was reconciling the account, there were so many accounting transactions that just couldn't be cleared or explained, which left a difference of about $3.9 million. I'd venture to say with my Edmonds knowledge and the comments made to me from the finance director during my time as treasurer, the $3.9 million is just a guess. I'd also go so far as to say there is no clear GL trail to support this amount either. Is that really how the county should be running their finance department? This is not acceptable, and it should be investigated via a detailed forensic audit by an independent auditor as soon as possible. Thank you.
I don't know that they heard.
Christine Ciccarelli, District 5.
Mismanagement of financial reporting. 4 simple FOIA requests were made for quarterly financial statements from Edmonds that correspond with the quarterly financial reports available on the county's financial recording section of the website. Although these would appear to be simple requests, we experienced time extension delays by default, pushback on availability of these reports in Excel, misinterpretation of the request perceived to be a delay tactic, requests that were non-responsive brushed aside as if they were never requested. The main objective was to confirm the statement made by the financial director in the last meeting that the quarterly reports represented in Excel match exactly to the Edmonds financial reports. After this review, we can say with certainty that statement and others made that night are patently false. In a review of 8 quarters of the general fund financial reports, we found of the 8 budgeted revenue amounts, only 2 matched 25%. Of the 8 budgeted expense amounts, only 4 matched, 50%. Of the 8 actual year-to-date revenue amounts, 0 matched, 0%. Of the 8 actual year-to-date expense accounts, 0 matched, 0%. Only 6 of 32 total values matched, an accuracy percentage of only 19%. More shocking was what was found when reconciling the finance Excel reports and the Edmunds reports. Irrespective of the false statement made last month by the finance director, the green triangles in Excel cells are formula error warnings. A comment appears in a different color, red, and in a different corner of the cell, right. The formulas in these cells are not referenced formulas. They are manually entered numbers being added or subtracted with other manually entered numbers. Inconsistent mapping of Edmunds accounts to summary report lines. Sometimes budget amounts appear on one line and the corresponding actual amount is on a different line. Some values are incorrect. Some were rounded when they were entered, others left out entirely. The actual Edmunds reports provided are full of handwritten notes, numbers, question marks, and other scribbles. No footnotes, disclaimers, or disclosures in the financial reports to explain any differences between the actual system of record and what was being represented as the King William Quarterly Financial Report. In summary, the financial information being published and presented is riddled with error and is prepared using manually entered numbers in Excel spreadsheets. Thank you.
I'd let him speak, even though it was his statement that he gave to somebody else to read. Is it his turn?
Chris Couch, District 5.
Didn't know that was against the rules, guys. In the meeting last month, during the quarterly financial report presentation, one supervisor asked for reports from Edmunds to be sent to the board. Mr. Greenwood, did you receive that? Did the Edmunds Funds report match the presentation exactly as the finance director said it would? You just heard that they don't. Another supervisor said, my goodness, I have a hard time thinking of what we're doing now other than analyzing. Well, the reality is you're not analyzing financials. You're reviewing financial reports. And there is a big difference between financial reporting and financial analysis. If you don't believe me, just Google it. He went on to say, unless we have reason to mistrust the numbers we are given, and I have none, that, my fellow citizens, is exactly what concerns us. One of the most tenured members of this board fails to question the presentation content when not a single year-to-date value reviewed matched what was in the financial system over the past year. 8 quarters, none of the values matched. In addition, financial reporting by the finance department has been listed by the auditor as a material weakness since 2018. That alone should be reason enough to question the numbers and request a review of the process. Responses to FOIAs for Excel extracts of the data for these reports were not provided, and the reason given was, quote, these reports are only available as PDF files and not CSV or Excel. That is in stark contrast to the Edmunds contract that reads, quote, through built-in custom reporting tools, users can create and save personalized reports that can be exported directly into Microsoft Excel. The Edmunds website is full of supporting statements such as, quote, the system's vast array of financial reports provide you with drill-down capability and one-click export to Excel. It eliminates the need for manual reporting and enables you to more easily and effectively analyze financial performance. You can also export custom reports to Excel. There are multiple case studies that describe the efficiency gains realized in leveraging the system to create custom reports. Either finance does not know how to use the system, or procurement is doing a poor job managing vendor contract scope. An investment in tax dollars was made into Edmunds, $150,000. Staff need to learn to use the system and not create a shadow GL and reporting in Excel that is prone to error and is inefficient, and it's no way a best practice. It's clearly been shown in this analysis that 2 of the 4 finance departments' publicly listed values are not being upheld. Number 1, transparent to our board and to our citizens, not when reports are so drastically different from the system of record. And number 2, operate using best financial practices. And I can assure you that hand jamming manual data into an Excel spreadsheet to create a report is by no means a best practice. Best practices would include peer reviews, quality assurance checks, and reports that come from the system of record. Why is it that citizens are finding these errors and not administration or the staff? Thank you.
Mike Wade of New Kent County.
Yes, Robert's rule doesn't apply.
Hold on a minute.
I'm Mike Wade.
Hold on, let it reset it. All right, now.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Tonight, I guess you get the idea that there's a coerced group of people coming together that are working together to uncover what we find in these FOIAs and be able to speak to you because you wouldn't let us have a presentation. Could have had a 10-minute back and forth, but you didn't take that option. So it's going to continue. And we're going to keep FOIA. And I noticed in your agenda, I heard it's changed now. It's a good thing because I heard you were going to do an economic stratification of public rights by starting to add the attorney's fees to FOIAs that you feel you need to look at. That kind of gets awful one-handed, and I believe FOIA counsel, who might be here in the room, would probably have something to add to that. And I know my attorney would. There's several FOIAs that are non-responsive. And you need to talk to your staff why that's happening. Because what's going to happen is we're going to go to court. And then you're going to pay us for our lawyer fees because we're going to win. And that's how that's going to go. And everything that's been said by every people that's come up here and spoke to you has been based off your own information. You see, the art of war is the same. If you want to beat your opponent, use his own tools. And that's what's happening here. And we're going to keep digging and we're going to keep uncovering it. You know, I think the best thing you guys could do is call for a forensic audit of the finance department on your own before somebody else does. Because we're going to keep moving and we have friends too. And that's not a threat, that's a promise. Because you insulted us last week. You insulted us with your words and you allowed him to insult us. And as Jessica said, impugning and all that, challenge accepted. The game is on. This is not a threat. It's a promise. Because the people that seeing this, and the more people I talk to in King William and in other areas, think it's just rotten. When books don't match, you go after people, you cut a woman's staff down till she was by herself. She worked like a dog, and the people saw it, and they sent you a message, 72%. And we all know where you were. And we all know where we were. And you might want to take those numbers to fact because they can be used again and again and again every month. It's not over yet. Have a good evening. I'll pass that audit ASAP.
Throw them out. Sarah Heinzman. Sarah Heinzman. What district are you with?
I was here to speak about the school budget. Am I wrong? Okay.
Yeah. Can you move me in? Thank you, Mary. Jennifer Feller?
So I'm going to relieve you from your financial woes for a minute. Basically, I'm just a mom and I wanted to discuss the library issues. About 4 years ago, I was in the library with my two sons. And I was homeschooling them at the time, doing my due diligence to raise moral, upright citizens. And I wanted to protect them. So I decided to homeschool them just to shield them from things that I see that are in our public schools. And lo and behold, I got a documentary at the library that had bare-chested women in it. And as they were watching it, I was making food in the other room, didn't know what it was. And then I saw that it was kind of like porn. And took the thing away and I previewed it later on, but I was very dismayed that this content, I was so naive that this content was available. I assumed it was educational. But I do have a suggestion. I do believe you understand the concerns of parents and the citizens about children, and I'm a mom and I'm concerned. You know, back in the day, we had child labor laws in the late 1800s, early 1900s that protected our children, and mental health is a major concern. As you all know, we are in a situation where children's mental health is very bad. And I know y'all want to protect the kids. We want to protect their innocence, especially their sexual innocence, and we want to do that at all costs. My solution that I'm suggesting is to allow this content that we all have seen as very questionable and explicit to not be in the hands of the children. I would ask that it be removed from the library shelves until the person that's buying this can be removed. I think we need to have a continuity of the public and the books that are there for our kids that we've seen tonight. And those items, until that person can be removed from that position, those items should be put back on a back shelf behind the librarian. So if a child is aware that they exist and they're looking for sexually explicit content, then they can ask a librarian. But I think you all know that the innocence of children is very important, and in a civil, upright, moral society, we do want to protect that.
With that, I will close the public comment period. Gentlemen, consent agenda, I have a motion. I move approval of the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Brand.
Mr. Garber,
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski.
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood,
Aye.
Chairman Hodges.
Aye. Next item is resolution 23-22 proclaiming April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month and declaring March 31st, 2023 as Wear Blue Day. Amanda R. Travis.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before you guys, you have the resolution 2322 for proclaiming April 2023 as National Child Abuse Prevention Month and declaring March 31st, 2023 as National Wear Blue Day to wear awareness. I'll read the resolution to you. Whereas in state fiscal year 2022, 52,894 children were reported as possible victims of abuse and neglect in Virginia. And whereas 29 children died as a result of abuse or neglect, and 55 cases are pending investigation as of October 19th, 2022 in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And whereas child abuse and neglect is a serious problem affecting every segment of our community, and finding solutions requires input and action from everyone. And whereas our children are our most valuable resources and will shape the future of King William County and the world. And whereas child abuse can have long-term psychological, emotional, and physical effects that have lasting consequences for victims of abuse. And whereas protective factors or conditions that reduce or eliminate risk and promote the social, emotional, and developmental well-being of children. And whereas effective child abuse prevention activities succeed because of the partnerships created between child welfare professionals, education, health, community and faith-based organizations, businesses, law enforcement agencies, and families. And whereas communities must make an effort to promote programs and activities that create strong and thriving children and families. And whereas we acknowledge that we must work together as a community to increase awareness about child abuse and contribute to promote the social and emotional well-being of children and families in a safe, stable, and nurturing environment. And whereas prevention remains the best defense for our children and families. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Board of Supervisors of King William County, Virginia, does hereby proclaim April 2023 as National Child Abuse Prevention Month and urges all citizens to recognize this month by striving to improve the quality of life for all children and families. And it be further resolved that the Board of Supervisors of King William County, Virginia, does hereby declare Friday, March 31st, 2023 as National Wear Blue Day and urges all citizens to wear blue to help raise awareness about child abuse and neglect and bring attention to prevention efforts and resources available to children, families, caregivers, and educators. Done this 27th day of March, 2023.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move adoption.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Brent.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski.
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood.
Aye.
Mr. Garber.
Aye.
Chairman Hodges.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item up is FOIA overview. Alan Gerhardt. He's by Zoom. You don't see him on there?
Mr. Gerhardt, are you on Zoom?
I guess not. Can we move that to another meeting?
Yeah, he was traveling today, so he may not have been able to make it.
Okay. All right, our next item is public hearings and resolution 23-23 VRA borrowing for water tower project, James E. Sanderson Jr. And I should say from Davenport.
Thank you. We've got the presentation up there with that. Work out this for you all. Thank you. Good to see you.
I guess Jimmy Sanderson again with Davenport and Company. We are financial advisor to the county. We talked back in December, looking at some capital projects that the county had on their agenda. And one in particular related to the water tower project and extension project, I'm sorry. And so we've updated that analysis for you. We have applied to the Virginia Resources Authority. That sale is coming up in the next couple of months. But before you, obviously, is a public hearing. There's a resolution in front of you too that gives authority to staff to execute that transaction with VRA. We talked also in December about applying some cash to the project too. So a little pay-go as well as a borrowing related to that project. And I want to give you a little bit of an update on that. So we've run two scenarios similar to what we did before. The project costs has increased to approximately 11.5 million. That was just north of 9 million, I believe, in December. So that's changed a little bit. But again, we're looking at our water and sewer sort of an enterprise fund by itself, not paid from other taxpayer dollars, but just the utility fund trying to fund this sort of self-supporting fund, which is typical with a utility credit. But we'll get to the scenarios again in a second. But what we want to look at here is a borrowing through VRA, 30 years, level debt service, 4.5% interest rate. That's gone down in our analysis from when we talked in December. We were estimating around 5%. Rates have come down. 4.5% is a little conservative too. The market is a little better than that right now, but we've got some time before we lock in that price. And again, we're going to look at $2 million of cash funding from, again, reserves that are within the water and sewer fund. So not your general fund monies either. Let's flip to the next slide if we could. Again, similar analysis to what we did before. The two things that we look at in particular with utility types of credits is line 11 and line 13, our debt service coverage ratio and our days cash on hand. And so what we've assumed here is looking at how 2022 ended and our prior years, projecting out what our revenues in the water and sewer fund would look like, as well as our cash in those funds going forward. And we've really just assumed a flat 2% growth in revenues and expenses here. So nothing up or down really on the expense side. And if that were to hold true, you would have debt service coverage ratios here just under two times coverage. And that again is at the end of the day, once you've paid your operating expenses, how much free cash flow do you have to pay debt service? And so 2 times coverage almost would mean you have twice the amount of debt service with free cash flow. So if our debt service is $600,000 in 2024, you would have free cash flow of about $1.2 million. So that's a very strong coverage, gives you some cushion in case things on the expense side go up, or you have other capital projects that you need to take on. Your days cash on hand, that's a measure of how many days you have reserves based off your daily cost to operate the fund. So your annual operating funds divided by 365 days, and we just convert it to that. So this is a strong number, over 1,000 days cash on hand. We've got some clients that have much higher than that, some that are a little bit lower, but we think that's a good place for you all to be. Again, assuming that there's no real strong increase in revenues or strong decline in revenues too, which we're going to show you what happens there in a moment. So sort of the takeaway would be everything continues to operate the way we are. You're going to have strong coverage. You're going to continue to add to your cash in these funds. And so if you do have other capital projects in the future, you can still, again, use those funds to pay for those capital projects or help leverage. One of the other things maybe I'll mention here too, the project hasn't been bid yet. So it's still accurate, right? And I think we would, my understanding is that the cost of these funds the project is on the conservative side. So what I'm suggesting is if the cost of the project were to come in lower, we wouldn't have over borrowed if we were to borrow for 100% of the project, and you would just apply less cash to fund the project. So if the project comes in below that 11.5 million, let's just say it comes in at 11 million, then we would only apply $1.5 million of our reserves to pay for it instead of the $2 million. Let's jump to the next slide if we could, because we want to sort of plan a little bit if things don't continue as well as they have. Again, a lot of our revenues in these funds are connection fees, so it may be a little bit subject to the economy. And if those revenues don't come in, what do we look like? And so what we did was we haircut 2023 by 35%. So just say your revenues go down 35% in that year. What is that going to look like going forward if we then just continue to grow it at 2%? Your debt service coverage is still above 1 times, which is going to be a covenant that VRA puts on you that you have at least 1 times coverage in this fund. So you'll set your rates and charges to try to generate at least 1 times coverage, which is pretty minimal. You want to at least cover your expenses, but your days cash on hand is still strong here. So you're still well above 1,500 days cash on hand. Again, the same assumptions with respect to the borrowing. And so again, this is what we sort of showed you. If things don't go as well in the future, we wanted to plan for that a little bit, but you're still at a coverage level that is strong. You're also at a days cash on hand level that is strong too. The other thing that we've recommended after talking with VRA too is, and we mentioned it in December, VRA did want to have what we call a moral obligation of the board behind it as well. So if our utility revenues are insufficient, the county would be we've called upon to actually pay that debt service. So if our revenues and our reserves weren't sufficient to pay the debt service, we would look to the county to come out of pocket of the general fund and pay for it. Again, that's all part of a strong, well-run utility system, which this has been historically, and the expectation it would be in the future. But having that moral obligation behind it also gives you a little bit more of a credit from VRA. VRA requires 1 times coverage under this structure. If we didn't have that, they would require a 1.25 times coverage. So you'd have to raise your rates to make sure you're generating at least 1.25 times coverage. So that would certainly be our recommendation Flip to the next page if you would. Again, we've submitted the application. We've updated this analysis for you. You've got a resolution in front of you that authorizes up to $12 million borrowing. I think the costs are right around that 11.7 million, which includes all the costs of issuance as well. In front of you, I did want to come back, obviously, and get some guidance from you about the amount of cash that you wanted to put into the fund or into the project. Again, we're recommending at that $2 million level. It still gives you plenty of reserves here, but also provides you some cushion on your debt service coverage if revenues were to decline in this fund. Again, I think if you were to put less money into it in cash, pay-go, then that's going to require you to borrow a little bit more and would put a little bit more pressure on your debt service coverage ratio going forward if revenues didn't come in as they have historically. So long way to say you've got a resolution in front of you. I'm happy to go through that, but it does authorize staff to move forward within certain parameters. And that is generally a maximum borrowing amount of 12 million, a maximum interest rate of 5.5%. So it gives us a little cushion there, and a maximum maturity of 2053. So that 30-year term. I believe that the resolution has gone through your council as well. They've looked at it and commented on it, but happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions?
And no questions, Mr. Chair. We've examined this pretty thoroughly, so.
Anything?
No, we've talked about this and talked about this and talked about it. It's, something we need for the future for sure. Well, I do have a question. How do we get from the 9 million projected to the 11.5? What happened? Just
Changes in the cost of the project as time went on. There wasn't I don't think one thing that pushed that cost up. It's just that it was always a cost estimate projected from engineering drawings to finally that 11.7 was going out to several contractors that actually build tanks and getting them to give us a sort of a quote on it just to get a good number into it. And we took the highest number that came back and put that into this.
So it was just an estimate.
Correct.
Or designed to give us adequate cushion for when we go out to bid. When we go out to bid,
The bid will
select the appropriate bid, obviously not the highest bid.
Mr. Green? I'm all for it. All right, now I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak about the water tower has 3 minutes per individual for each hearing matter. And do you have a list?
There's no one signed up to speak on this matter.
Anyone would like to come forward now?
Good evening, Terry Stone, 4th District. I'm not here tonight for the water tower, but I overheard something in the presentation. I would encourage the board not to offer a moral obligation of the county to support this project. An enterprise fund should be self-sustaining. The users of that project should pay the cost. I would assume, I have not seen the information, some of that is commercial or should be commercial. And so the residential taxpayers of the county should not have to support that cost. The users that are benefiting from it should. I understand the moral obligation, VRA would like to see it, and that may buy down your rate, but that's because it will put the entire county at risk for that debt should the connections not come through. So thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, I close that public hearing.
Give Mr. Sampson an opportunity to speak to that question.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to that? Sure. Yeah, I think it's a fair comment, but it's one that depending on in particular the size of your utility system is going to be one where a fair number of local governments across the state don't have self-supporting systems and do provide moral obligations in particular. You have one that again I think is strong
And the goal would be for it to continue to be self-supporting. VRA has required a one-times coverage requirement on the county. So you will be required to set the rates at least at a level to produce enough revenue to cover your expenses and cover your debt service. So absent there being a year that revenues don't materialize and you haven't had an opportunity to then increase your rates and charges, you shouldn't be called upon to meet that moral obligation. The MO is one that really just gives VRA some comfort because it's a smaller system. It's not uncommon from them.
The counselor have any opinions?
No, I know bond counsel has reviewed this. I spoke with them earlier today. They made me aware of the moral obligation clause, but they had no concern with it.
What are the implications of doing this without the moral obligation? Does it make it less likely to land it? Does it increase the interest rate? What?
It won't increase your interest rate. I think we'd have to go back to VRA and make sure they're comfortable with that, just generally. But I would expect to see at least the coverage number would have to be higher. VRA may require a debt service reserve fund as well, which would require you to borrow additional money, set it in an account to offset if there's ever a year where you don't have sufficient revenues to pay the debt service. You would use that debt service reserve fund to pay it. So there will be additional, the interest rate may be the same, but you may be required to borrow more money in order to effectuate the transaction.
Anything else?
No. This would be my recommendation, is that you do put the moral obligation behind it. I think it'll save the county money.
I'll say Mr. Sanderson has not steered us wrong in all my years on this board. We've done a lot of work with Davenport. They've advised us always very accurately. So I've got no issue moving forward with what they've presented. Again, this is an issue that we've been looking at for some months now. We know this is a project that we're going to need. We know, furthermore, I think that, it's reasonable to project that these revenues are going to be able to cover it. There's no reason to think that the intake of this fund is going to crater in some way. We ran the exercise just to see what the implication would be of it.
That's right. And you still have,
But there's no reason to
even
predict that.
projecting those lower revenues, you still have sufficient reserves to help offset any shortfalls as well. Okay.
Was that a motion?
Yeah, I'll move approval of resolution 2323.
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Brings.
Mr. Miskowski.
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood.
Aye.
Mr. Garber.
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
Chairman Hodges.
Aye. All right, the next item up, Mr. Ashcraft, proposed FY 24 budget.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight you have a public hearing on the FY 24 budget. On April the 13th, I presented a larger version of this. Tonight I will be much more brief. March, but will be much more brief and will certainly be eligible to answer any questions that might be. The budget process, as I've said before, in all my years of government, is the most important activity that the Board of Supervisors goes through. It's a roadmap for financial planning, and in this case, it's for FY 24 and beyond. And the budget must be balanced in accordance with state code, and what was proposed to you on March the 13th was a balanced budget. The budget was introduced on the 13th, and it came after 5 pre-budget work sessions, one with which included a meeting with the King William County School Board. The next budget work session was held on March the 20th, in which the board reviewed some budget matters, particularly the Commissioner of the Revenue's Office. If I talk tonight about anything, it's about financial management. And one thing here in the county is that we feel like that we operate a $62 or $69.2 million business. We take that very seriously, and we continue to move forward with the financial policies that the county has. And those are the ones that have been adopted by the Board of Supervisors over the years, that we continue to strengthen throughout our management of this budget. The unassigned fund balance is a 20% policy that the Board of Supervisors approved of general fund expenditures. The unassigned balance is estimated to be at $9.9 million, or 35% of the general fund expenditures as of June the 30th, 2022. And as you know, we're waiting on the completion of the 22 audit to confirm that number, but that is the estimate right now. And as of June the 30th, in a couple of months, the projection is to be 28%, which is $1.6 million that was appropriated for FY23 CIP projects, minus that. The budget provisions that are used by staff to build this budget begins with following the split levy funding formula that was approved by the General Assembly in 2014, has continued to be the model in which this county operates its government. There's an emphasis on the Board of Supervisors directing the equalization of the real estate tax levy. And I know the word equalization has come into question because at 44% of the assessed values, some taxpayers will pay more, some will pay less. But this board made a promise to the residents of this county that they would bring the assessments and value to 1% of that. And that's what this budget is built upon. There is an emphasis on public education that will be demonstrated in a few more slides. There's an emphasis on public safety. An emphasis on utility expansion, which you just took a major step forward just a few moments ago. An emphasis on recreation and the service to our youth and senior citizens. And an emphasis on employee compensation and the reorganization of our government. And the implementation of the comprehensive plan, which took a year or so to work through the system. And as county staff, we're working that plan and will continue to work that over the next few years. Mr. Chairman, it's been a practice over the years that non-property tax revenues that were collected always never returned to county government if there was an overage. Any revenues received were always given back, move forward. It's our recommendation this evening that those revenues be captured for two areas that this board has shown to be the emphasis as we move forward, and that's economic development and recreation. That does not take any of the revenues that have been projected that were entitled to be placed in the school division's budget, but the overage would return so that those monies could be captured and paid for expenses in the future for economic development and recreation. That is a practice change that we're recommending to the board. It's not a policy. It is allowed under the 2014 agreement in the General Assembly, but it's something that this board has felt strongly about, or at least the majority, and staff has reacted by offering that proposal this evening. The general fund budget is proposed at $32,607,382. You can see through the pie chart the various percentages of the budget. The transfer to schools is 35%. And you add another 6% with school debt. Schools are receiving 41% of the pie. Then you work your way around the salaries, the public assistance, operating expenditures, and county debt. That makes up 100% of your general fund. 136 full-time positions are included in this request. There's only one new position, and the board authorized that just the other day to go ahead and advertise for that, and that is an assessor's position in the Commissioner of the Revenue's office, which would begin to assess property on an annual basis and not every 4 years or so like we've been before. We also are requesting a reclassification of 6 manager positions to director. And we are requesting salary increases for our employees. And we pay our folks on a merit system as well as a cost of living system. 2% of that would be a cost of living, and up to 3% would be earned by merit. And we have this year no increases in employee insurance by Anthem, which we're very proud of. This is the 2nd year in a row. And a great deal of that goes to our employees who started a wellness program and have devoted themselves to reduce claims, and we've met those goals. In the area of education, the total appropriation of the school division is $13,240,626. When you back out debt service, which is paid on behalf of the school division, that is 1.789574. So that leads to a direct funding of $11,451,052. That is an increase of $538,390 from FY23. It's been stated by some correspondences that I know that this board has received that we have cut the school division budget. On the contrary, we have added over $500,000 to the proposed budget this year. And I would remind everyone that 5 of the last 6 years, the board appropriation exceeds the previous year. And over that span was an increase of $2 million to the school division. I also want to make note that there is approximately $3.9 million in 2 reserve accounts for the school division. That's not widely known. It was pointed out earlier this evening. Those funds can be captured by the school division by making a request to the Board of Supervisors for its consideration.
Which may be more like $4 million.
Could be. The school division is estimated to earn approximately $100,000 in new interest in FY24 that we have not factored in to their growth. And enrollment numbers in our school division have not returned to 2019 level. And at that time, their enrollment was 2213. This was provided by the interim superintendent. The current enrollment is now 2103. So what that means is, even though we're climbing, that state funding has gone down and the Board of Supervisors funding has increased over the same period. Now, Mr. Chairman, investments in public safety. We start with the fire and EMS budget, which is proposed at $1.8 million. That's an 8% increase over FY23. The sheriff's office budget is proposed at 2.9, which is a 5% increase. And the equalization of certain salaries to be made comparable to the sheriff's office in fire and EMS is in the amount of $50,000 plus. And funding for a public radio system in the amount of $389,967. That is our lease and maintenance fees that we pay on a brand new system. which just got up and running at the middle of last year. Our volunteer companies, which we rely heavily on, there's a total of 706,000 that is spread across Mango Hick, Walkerton, and West Point. Overall, that's a 2% increase. That includes operations, capital, and radio support in some regard for all three of them. The remaining constitutional officers, the Commonwealth Attorney, there's a 2% increase. Commissioner of Revenue is a 400 plus increase, and we have adjusted that slightly because of approving that position. You approved an increase in the salary line for the commissioner, and that will be adjusted when we do the final numbers.
That's for the assessor.
That's for the assessor, yes. Sir. The treasurer, 11% increase. And the clerk of the circuit court, it's a 14% increase, and most of that is new furnishings, which a good deal, if not all of that, will be covered by state grant. Contributions to outside agencies, it's over $5 million. Some of the major ones are social services, CSA, which is our children's fund, the regional library, our BIPSA, which is our partner in waste hauling. And of course, we're making a huge increase in the infrastructure there of the site near the King William High School. Our annual contribution this year will be over $1.2 million. And then the regional jail, which is a 16% increase.
Now, Vips, that is not including the updates at Central Garage.
That's a capital.
It's not including the capital, it is including another staff to be on operating there.
Thank you, sir. Capital and equipment. It's been noted that many years have gone by when investments haven't been made in capital. And for a growing county, the time has come that the board has wanted to look very seriously at upgrades in a new library and upgrades to recreation, to the recreation park. And those will be around $10.5 million. Admin board, we need to increase opportunities for Zoom, better hearing, better monitoring that have to do with, and that is also certainly serving the public. Facilities, department needs a storage in an office building. And then the emergency operations center, which will be the hub during any kind of an emergency. Also, our animal shelter, we've talked about our partnership with King and Queen. We're hopeful that we can come to an agreement where we can build this sick room to take care of those animals, along with the equipment and the fire alarm detection that goes along with the building.
But we still don't have a commitment.
We do not, that's right. We do not, right now, we do not. Vehicle replacement for the sheriff. We want to continue on a schedule. $120,000 worth of vehicles this coming proposal. HVAC replacements in our buildings, 100,000, and roofing replacements at 252,000.
Where is that at?
I don't know that we had the list yet for next year.
The courthouse is the big one. And it's to build up that. It's not that would be replaced next year.
We discussed debt service earlier when it comes to the water tower project. Our total outstanding debt is 46 million as of June 30th. It's projected to be that amount. I call your attention that 24 million of that is within the school, King William School Division, 53%. The annual payments for debt is 1,789,573. The county debt is 10,251,359. It's 22%. And now you have utility debt getting ready to sign on. We were debt free for a while, but it's good that we've built the reserves and we've been able to get a good interest rate to fund that that project.
And his estimate on revenues is like 1.5.
Yes,
for
I
that
believe.
thing, something like that.
Yes. Utility fund, very sound. The operating budget is 1.3. They're asking for a 13% increase due to the debt service that we just talked about. Our fund serves approximately 753 county residents, 705 are customers in the residential area, and 48 are non-resident. And of course, the sanitation is taken care of by the Hampton Road Sanitation District for our wastewater. Mr. Chairman, staff worked a great deal to try to find what that 1% was. I know the charge of this board was to get within 1% of the assessed values. And we feel like that we have done that. Of course, the general fund remains the same at 32,607,382. And if you look, the property tax percentage of this pie is at 44%. And the personal property, if you combine vehicle and regular personal property, that's 19%. And then you can go around the pie and see where the remaining revenues that come into our government come from. This chart shows you that we were able to propose to the board a real estate tax rate of 58 cents. That comes down from 82.5 cents that is in this current year that we're in right now. And you can see our comparison to other counties, if that rate holds. We are at 58%. We know some of the other counties are still in their budget deliberations as well. I know I just read that New Kent has asked for 2% increase, not a decrease. So that is something that we will continue to watch and monitor.
I'm gonna repeat what I said the last meeting, is that does not mean your taxes are not going up some. There will probably, more than likely, with a reassessment, almost 50% increase in your value, has got to be an increase in, and even though we've cut the rate way down.
That's right. Yes, sir. We've talked about the recommended property rate at 58 cents. Countywide, it's at 30 cents. And the King William School District is 28 cents.
And West Point has voted on a 53 cents, so their rate actually will be 83 cents for West Point.
Okay. The vehicle tax, we are proposing that it drop back to 365 where it was last year. As you know, the board amended that to 265 in August. Personal property would remain the same as well. And then your machinery and tools will remain the same. The budget schedule moving forward, Mr. Chairman. You're having your public hearing this evening. Your tax rate, the public hearing would be on April the 24th at 7 o'clock. And then the consideration of setting the tax rates and the adoption of the budget would be on May the 8th at 7 o'clock. I remind the public that the budget document is online at kwc.gov, the entire budget. And additional information can be found in the budget message, which I think provides a very good narrative for those who don't want to go in and look at all the line items, and it hits on every area of government that's contained within that document. That's my proposal for this evening, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Members have any questions before we go to public hearing?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to point out, Mr. F got this correct. You said the amount of the increase of the interest, and that is mainly due to the diligent efforts of our current treasurer, Ms. Carlton, right? Because she got us a much better interest rate
Absolutely.
on all of our accounts, not just the school accounts.
The dialogue between her and our finance department was tremendous in working that out. And it was something that we were hopeful that we could get the cooperation of the institution involved. And it's job well done there.
Mr. Ashcraft, could you stress to the people out there how important this assessor's position is? I know some of the correspondence that was floating around were somewhat criticizing us for adding that position. Can you tell us what it can do, bringing revenue in a timely manner?
Well, first of all, the reassessment that was just completed and now the Board of Equalization is conducting its hearings was the first time in 8 years that the Board of Supervisors was successful in having a reassessment. That may have been good for the taxpayer over a period of time, but it certainly kept an artificial view as to what property really was valued in the county for a number of years. The hiring of an assessor will allow the Commissioner of Revenue to send that person out and continue to update property as new construction and the market value of sales. All that will be taken into consideration so that we can add that to the land book each and every year. To not do that, we would be back 4 years. Is that what our county code says? 4 years. And it depending on how the economic times are, it could cause a fluctuation in the tax rate just because we're trying to promote more services for the government, more activities for its people, but you may not be able to do it at that 58. But if we can continue to keep the properties where they are, at 58 might last a while. We'll have to see.
And this will do away with us paying, I think this last reassessment, we paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $400,000.
Leading up to that, yes.
This position will clearly pay for itself.
That's right. Yes, sir.
And add to that, Mr. Garver, that it's been very difficult to even finding.
There was one bidder. That's right. That's right.
That's all.
Anybody else?
The only comment I'll make was what we talked about at the last meeting, which was how we capture the revenue off of those funds. And I had spoken my discomfort with the idea of that. And I thought we had come to an agreement that in keeping with the spirit of the split levy, it didn't really make sense to do that. And we discussed some other strategies to try to capture those funds more accurately by a little bit more aggressive projections. So I still stand by my thought that, taking any monies that are collected in districts 2 through 5 exclusively that are part of the split levy funds, and directing those funds towards any other use, again, doesn't violate the letter of the split levy. To me, it does not, keep with the spirit of it entirely. So I want to keep discussing that before we make a final decision there.
Sure.
But in those funds are also provided from District 1. Also.
That's not in the
general.
No, not in the funds we're talking about. No, we're talking about the split levy 2 through 5 funds exclusive.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
And at this point, do you have a list, Chris? Okay. And I will open the public hearing on the proposed FY24 budget. And you have 3 minutes per individual. And Chris, please.
Carolyn Jones, District 2.
Well, good evening. My name is Carolyn Jones and I live in the 2nd District. This is my 2nd year teaching in King William, and I teach the English language learners at all 4 schools. I am a career changer. My undergraduate degree focused on public policy, so I have been closely following all your meetings for the past 3 weeks. With that said, I do not feel that your discussion last week or this week so far fairly represented the nature of the $3.9 million in KWCPS's total reserve and restricted funds. See, we have money in reserves because the school board was cautious about how we used ESSER federal funding and other temporary or unpredictable revenue sources these past 2 years. A good school board is forward-thinking and knows how to build reserves for major future capital needs without causing major fluctuations in revenue requests. This includes things that only come up every 5, 10, or 15 years, like replacement buses and major maintenance. Regardless of the school board's wisdom and best efforts, though, Our staff turnover is very high. Not only has the mental strain of this job increased around the country since COVID started, but the financial strain has increased as well, at least here in King William and Virginia. Inflation is high, and for some teachers and staff, rent went up by $100 a month this past fall. Other counties are increasing school employees' pay by 6 to 8.5%. We live in a free market economy where talent can be pulled away from our county at any time. Nobody gets into this job for the money, but why do we expect teachers to stay in a job where the mental and financial strain are both increasing? Right now, the middle school and high school are so short-staffed that in addition to being forced to rely on several online classes, we have staff losing preparation and grading time frequently. Teachers are getting pulled from their prep time to substitute teach because we don't have enough substitute teachers to cover our long-term current teacher shortages. At Hamilton Homes, this happens multiple times per week. Many teachers already take grading home with them, and many take part-time work or coach sports during the school year. Losing prep time often forces teachers to work even longer hours, which takes time away from raising their own families. Our county's needs will continue to increase as we get hundreds of new houses across the county. We must consistently invest in the schools so we can keep pace with our county's growth. If we're struggling to attract and retain teachers right now, how much more are we going to struggle when our county grows? Please listen to what my colleagues are telling you tonight about their teaching conditions and our schools and students' needs. Revisit the proposed budget, revise the numbers, and give the schools what we're asking for to invest in our community and in our futures. Thank you.
Jeffrey Lazarus, District 3.
Don't believe they heard you, Chris. Repeat it again.
Jeffrey Lazarus, District 3.
All right, good evening. My name is Jeff Lazarus. I live in the Ayla district. I'm a mathematics teacher at King William High School. I'm here tonight to ask you to allocate the necessary funds to provide the teachers at King William County with a 7% raise. This is no longer a debate about whether you think teachers are overpaid or underpaid. Those voices and opinions are being drowned out by the resounding whisper of the free market. The laws of supply and demand cannot be any more evident than what is currently on display right before our eyes. Teachers all across this country, including right here in King William County, are fleeing the profession in record numbers, and there are few who are willing to fill their shoes. This has created a high demand for licensed professional educators to fill these vacancies. As with any product or service that is in high demand, the cost of acquiring that product or service increases, period. Here in King William County, we have been and will be losing teachers this year as they flee the profession. If the competitive raises are not funded, we will lose even more, leaving King William County Public Schools with a record number of vacancies that will go unfilled for the new school year. You might ask, how can this be? Or is this really possible? Well, here are the numbers. According to the proposed budget for Henrico County Schools, a first-year teacher will earn $54,602. A first-year teacher in King William will be offered about $6,000 less. What would you do if you were a teacher? In fact, a first-year teacher in Henrico County, a teacher with zero experience, will essentially make as much as a 13-year veteran in King William. And that is if a 5% raise is approved. Once again, what would you do if you were a teacher? What about someone like me, a teacher with over 20 years of experience? Should King William not offer a competitive raise, acquiring a new position in Henrico County would allow me to make a 13.3% more than I do now to provide for my family. If I acquire a position in Chesterfield County, I would make 19.9% more than I do right now. Now factor in an additional $2,500 sign-on bonus and ask, what would you do? In conclusion, if we don't adequately fund education here in King William County by providing a competitive salary
to attract and retain teachers. We will most likely have many unfilled vacancies in our schools come August. The students will report to school where half of their classes will be taught online via virtual Virginia. Do you want our children to be taught online by someone working out of their home office in Texas? Or do you want our children to be taught in person by qualified professional teachers, many of whom live here in King William, who have a vested interest in making this county a great place to raise a family? Thank you.
Thank you.
Dina McKinney, District 5.
Stephen,
Dina McKinney, District 5.
I think it's the applause. I think it's drowning out the speaker. So we wait until they're, yeah.
Good evening. I stand before you as a resident of King William County, 5th District, a parent of 2 children who graduated from King William, one who is employed by King William currently, and I myself am an employee of King William County Public Schools. I've been with King William for 25 years. I've been here through our pay stubs being frozen, barely getting a raise, watching our insurance increase, and now being told that we're not worthy of a 5% to 7% raise. In a critical time for teachers, hiring quality licensed teachers is a priority. It's difficult to attract and keep teachers in King William when we feel undervalued and unappreciated. By telling teachers in our county that we are not worth a 5 to 7% raise, why would we stay? I can tell you right now, my child is leaving King William County to go to another county. And it's not just the money, it's the respect. And this board has disrespected our teachers by telling us we're not worth it. Last Thursday, in a meeting that we had with some of our board officers, we were told that we've had 8 teachers resign and approximately 32 teachers ask for an extension on their contract before signing it. That's a possible 40 positions. And I know as of right now, those numbers probably have increased. How can we provide quality education to our children if we don't have a staff? Who's going to go in and cover those classes when possibly 40 teachers walk? Think about that, please.
Thank you.
Sharon Landrum, District 5.
Good evening again. I'm here this time with a smile because I have good news. I would like to save King William taxpayers roughly over $600,000 for 2024. As you've heard this evening from a large contingency of citizens, the Pamunkey Regional Library is not representing the concerns of our citizens, nor providing a safe learning environment for King William children, but they're instead intent upon promoting a progressive, destructive agenda. I would like to propose that King William withhold $130,827,000 that was allocated in addition to the budgeted amount of $444,597 for 2023. So as a taxpayer, I call for defunding the Pamunkey Regional Library of the $602,907 proposed for 2024. At this point, King William should consider other alternatives that reflect its community standards, not those of Pamunkey Regional Library, the VLA, or the ALA, which seek to undermine our local community and spread their destructive agenda. So I'd like to leave with that wonderful note: defund the Pamunkey Regional Library. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Earhart, District 5.
Good evening. You have most of my comments already, so I will try to be speed reading this evening. I think it was February 25th, 81, Ronald Reagan said, "We can't spend ourselves rich." Yet 7 consecutive years, we've increased our operational budget. Moran, Garber, and Greenwood, all either personally or within your family, benefit from land use tax exemption. You do not disclose that to anybody. You're not required to under law, but morally, you should be telling people when you vote for these budgets, you're essentially voting yourself or your family a raise by not addressing land use tax exemptions. Forest and agricultural land use values have not been reevaluated for approximately 10 years with respect to the SLE Act. This can only be done when assessments are done on homes. Why was that not done now? In consultation with the Commissioner of Revenue, this should have been a factor in establishing our budget. It's well documented by the Piedmont Environmental Council, Department of Conservation, and Department of Education through the Fiscal Composite Stress Index that land use tax exemption shifts burdens to homeowners and reduces the amount of money coming to our county through the Department of Education. Even the county administrator has said, state funding is going down, local funding is going up. Why is that? We're spending more and we're continuing to bankroll it through our homeowners when others are benefiting from it. We do not need a $10.5 million for a new sports complex and library, given the current fiscal situations. We got banks foreclosing, we got economies failing. I think we should give the teachers their increase. However, other than Miss Johnson and maybe Natasha, people don't know what a caboose bill is. At the end of the fiscal year, there's a reconciliation done. This county is already paying $4.5 to $4.7 million more to the King William Public School System than the state requires us through the standards of quality. We are overfunding $4.5 to $4.7 million more than what the state requires us. Why don't we cut $1 million out of that and give it to the teachers? No, we just want more and more and more. Also, the use of COVID money for broadband internet.
Connie. T.
Good evening. I'm Connie Plum, and I teach AP US Government and US Government at King William High School. As a veteran teacher of 40 years, I want to share my thoughts on the current educational situation. In my classes, we talk a great deal about wars and battles. Since I started teaching, I have witnessed many changes in education. Let me illustrate. 40 years ago, I could put my duties on a salad plate. Time passed. 20 years later, my role increased. My responsibilities increased. A dinner plate. Since 2020, the start of the pandemic to now, the roles have multiplied to an unbearable weight, an enormous platter. Imagine the platter filled high and overflowing with our duties. The roles and responsibilities and obligations include inspiring learners, nurturing healthy curiosity in learners, creating a meaningful learning experience and environment, leveraging technology to support learning, researching learning strategies. As we prepare to the young learners to face the future with courage, confidence, and knowledge, a teacher is a role model, an inspiration, a well-wisher, a cheerleader, a third parent, a coach, a nurse, a shoulder to cry on, advisor, and yes, a protector. Currently, we're in a crisis of a dire teacher shortage, and it breaks my heart to see colleagues leaving my profession
I so deeply love. We cannot allow this to continue. The income we make often fails to be a living wage. Teachers work 2 to 3 part-time jobs to pay their rent, mortgage, utilities, food, fuel, childcare, and college expenses. Many working within the school system actually live below the current poverty level. You gentlemen may not see these situations. You are only looking from the outside. For example, you see the clerk at Food Line, but checking out your groceries, but you don't see that they're a teacher. The same could be said for the clerk at Home Depot, Lowe's, or BJ's. I encourage you to open your eyes and see the situation. Come to Cool Spring and sit in a reading circle in kindergarten. Do lunch and playground duty. Visit a Quentin. Take part in a language or math lesson. Do language and playground duty. Hop next to Hamilton Homes for a science class where there's only one in-person science teacher for the entire 6th grade. Try your hand at virtual learning. And then come to KWHS. Sit in a chemistry experiment, English class, band. Be sure to do all the duties. And after your visit, you will hear people call the children of King William by names. The Sherman kids, the Stone kids, the McConville kids, the Perry kids, the Dartez kids, the Jones kids, the Hill kids, and yes, the Plum kids. Travis, your brother and sister were Plum kids. Please support this teacher, support giving them what is deserved by the children of King William County. Oh. Also,
Howard Hill, District 2.
we spend some money to turn on the AC.
Yeah, I was about to mention something, Steve, because I noticed people fanning themselves, and I'm feeling it up here too, so. I think it's just the crowd is overworking with it, yeah.
Hold on, I ain't spoke yet, so they're trying to do the 86. Thank you. Thank you.
We're not gonna take your time from you now.
I know. I appreciate that. Good evening. My name is Howard Hill, agriculture teacher at King William High School, taxpayer, King William County. I ask you today, every one of us have been impacted by a teacher. There was a teacher somewhere that saw something in us and gave us guidance. I can name 2 right off the bat. My grandmother, Helen Hill, who taught at Sharon Indian School and taught in King William County under Superintendent Mr. Garber. Mr. H.L. Mays, who took me under his wing and put me in the position I am now. We're asking for the 5% raise. Here's the reason why. Governor Northam in the General Assembly passed 2 years ago that they would do a 10% raise over 2 years. We got our 5% raise last year, and I thank you for that. But now we're catching wind that we're only getting a 2.5 raise. Other counties, and I can tell you one because I'm on the board, King Queen's getting a 7% raise to its teachers. You got other schools like James City getting 10%. Other schools, Chesterfield, Henrico, getting anywhere from 8 to 9%. And the numbers go on. We have 60% of our teaching staff lives outside of King William County. Think about that. If I'm a teacher from Chesterfield coming to King William, I'm going to pass through 3 counties where I could get a higher raise just to teach at King William County. Just think about it. The next thing I have to ask you is this. We're talking about all the economic impact, and here we're going to build these houses and stuff that we're talking about. If these teachers leave, where are you going to get teachers from? That's an honest answer to you. Where are you going to get these teachers? Going back on what Ms. Plum said, our duties are filled like that dinner plate or platter that she showed. We are just not teachers anymore. We're doctors, we're psychiatrists, financial advisors, bankers. We're even auto mechanics for our students. Our students rely on us more than ever, and it all comes from the pandemic. They depend on us for everything under the sun. My last words to you is this. Come watch us teach. Come sit down in a class and watch your teachers in your county teach. Just don't go in and say, hello, I'm your board of supervisors member.
Sit in the class, watch what they do. I think you'll be shocked. And then I don't think you'll ever have this situation that you're having tonight of people coming up asking for a raise, because you will definitely see what the teachers in your county are doing. I thank you for everything that you do for us. I hope that you'll take all these words that are being given tonight to heart and look into this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stacy Johnson, District 2.
Good evening, Mr. Hodges and fellow Board of Supervisors. I am Stacy Johnson, Interim Superintendent for King William County Public Schools. I am honored to stand here as a 27-year employee with King William County Public Schools, a resident of District 2, and as the Interim Superintendent. King William County Public Schools has been and continues to be a top-notch school division because of our dedicated staff members and supportive parents and community members. However, for the first time in my career in King William, I'm very concerned about the position the school division could be in the near future. On March 7th, I presented a needs-based budget to you with a total increase of $1,085,145 over the current budget. Less than a week after my presentation, Mr. Ashcraft presented a proposed budget to you that, if adopted, would only fund 49.7% of that request, which ultimately means that King William County Public Schools staff would see a salary increase of approximately 2.5% and not receive the 5% raise that is in line with the General Assembly's and the governor's proposed budgets. However, in his proposed budget, Mr. Ashcraft recommends the county staff be given up to a 5% pay increase. To say that staff were disappointed would be an understatement. Since Mr. Ashcraft presented his proposed budget on March 13th, the school division has received 11 resignations. As you all are well aware, the teacher shortage is now a crisis. With that being said, the school division issued contracts for the next school year and asked that they be returned by last Friday. Unfortunately, after learning of Mr. Ashcraft's budget proposal, 33 teachers have not signed their contract and have requested an extension. Each of these valued teachers has indicated that they do not want to sign a contract without knowing if the King William Board of Supervisors is going to not only support them, but more importantly, the children in this community. Successful schools are the foundation of a successful community, and schools are only successful if they have dedicated, talented staff that receive competitive compensation. We must pay our staff salaries that keep pace with inflation and reward them for year after year of increased workloads and increased accountability and mandates. I am hopeful that each of you will demonstrate a commitment to King William County Public Schools. Our students deserve this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Holly Dartez, District 5.
My name is Holly Dartez, and I live in the 5th District. This is my 30th year teaching in King William. I am very proud to say that I have been at Hamilton Holmes Middle School the entire time. Our school's needs have changed in the last 30 years. One of the biggest challenges we have seen has been in the past few years with the COVID-19 pandemic and the huge impact it had on our schools. Teachers were asked to switch gears almost overnight to include virtual, Zoom, new technology, and also concerned about the well-being of each and every child that was at home and was also trying to learn. However, the crisis didn't end even though the pandemic ended. Teachers are facing new challenges in the classroom because so many of our students are now struggling. Plus, the mental strain of the job has increased since COVID started. In the past few years, teacher turnover has been higher than I have ever witnessed. I recognize that we are the largest line item in the budget. We are also the largest employer in the county outside of West Point. We have 4 schools serving all of our students. I am proud to claim that all 3 of my sons have graduated from King William County schools. I also now have grandchildren in these schools. A competitive wage is more important than ever before. I don't want to see any of my colleagues leave King William County for a signing bonus from another county. I want my colleagues to be able to stay in this profession long-term, just like I have. Inflation is high, and I know my colleagues will leave for better jobs if they have to for their family's sake. Teachers will leave if the combination of financial stress and mental stress from the job isn't itself somewhat resolved. Our schools are the pillars of the community, as has been stated many times, and we as residents and educators need to invest in them properly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Harry Stone, District 4.
Good evening. I am representing the school board tonight. I don't know if that's extra time or not. It is for us. Okay, so get started. A lot of this I have already covered in the several emails that I've sent you. I know one every 3 days or so. But I am here to advocate for full funding of the King William County School Board budget. As we've covered, the county administrator's budget only covers 49.7% of the request, and it does not provide sufficient funding for the local share of Governor Youngkin's 5% pay increase for the next school year. While it's $538,000, we all know that the debt service, we have to pay that. That's non-negotiable. And so the remaining funds only equals about 2.5%. In addition to our concern over not providing the raise, we would send back about $500,000 to the state, because if we're not willing to meet that at least a 5% pay increase, then we will forfeit those funds back to the state. And none of our neighbors are doing that. No one is sending monies back and not implementing at least a 5% pay increase that we are aware of. And I asked you all to reach out to VACO to also do your homework to see if there were any. We're already seeing resignations. You've heard about that. And what that means that we're going to start next school year with even fewer licensed teachers in the classroom in August of 2023, right before your local elections in November of 2023. And we will certainly share that we advocated strongly for that pay increase. I know that the county pay increase 5% is merit and a COLA, but I think if you look back, my experience, 32 years in local government, is 97 to 98% of all your employees get that full pay increase of 5%. Also of great concern is the other revenues that's in the proposed budget. I sent a recap of the proposed budget and asked Mr. Ashcraft, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you're proposing to do something different than what has been done in the past with other revenues. When that legislation was approved, the General Assemblyman didn't know exactly how we were going to allocate every revenue. It says may because we were still negotiating with the town and the county of how that would exactly be allocated. And they said, here's the laundry list of all the revenues you should consider. They weren't telling King William County what to do. What if Amazon wanted to come in here and open a huge facility? Well, yes, maybe we would get together and sit down and say, there's a reason to do something different with these other revenues. But that approach was negotiated between 2 people from the town of West Point, 2 attorneys, and 1 person representing King William County. And that was a local government CPA, myself. And that is what we agreed upon. And implementing that resulted in a significant change in the tax rate between county and schools. Okay. Well, so I'm just sharing with you the history. I think it's important that we get it right. And we will not let this go. We will not let this go. And I don't think the town wants to read
Jessica McLean, District 5.
Hello again, Jessica McLean, District 5. I have 4 children in the district. I'm here tonight to offer my input on the most important thing in our budget, which is our schools. And I'm going to be very bluntly honest about this whole situation from the way I see it tonight. I think the classic fable called The Ant and the Grasshopper is a fitting illustration of our school board budget proposal this year. It's a tale about a grasshopper who relaxed all summer, not thinking about preparing for the winter, and was left out in the cold and starving, while the ants who worked and saved had everything they needed. Our school board is like the grasshopper because it's not just this board of supervisors that mismanages funds. They're essentially begging the taxpayers to pay the consequences. They did not plan ahead, they did not save. But the teachers and students are the ones now paying the price. I warned the school board months ago that this would happen. I told them that by going on a spending spree with federal COVID aid, it would artificially inflate the budget. They of course ignored and continue to hire and hire multiple staff and buy expensive equipment they knew that they still had to pay for when the millions in aid ran out. And now, just as I predicted, they're stuck with the tab they can't afford, the teacher salary. It doesn't take a finance degree or CPA to know that 1 + 1 will not equal 3, no matter how you try and spin it. I wholeheartedly support funding our teachers, funding our schools, giving them every resource they need to succeed. Our teachers deserve compensation and our students deserve every material advantage. I would just like all the members of all of our governing boards to have to answer, though, publicly, why more tax money is not equating to more success. Could there be another reason? I hear the stories, my heart breaks for all the teachers who have spoken tonight. I've been a teacher, I know exactly what they're going through. It's not just about the money, it's about the conditions. And our school board is responsible for those conditions. They are responsible to make the wholehearted, meaningful change of policy that would keep our teachers teaching and happy. That's really the bottom line issue. Yes, money is important. Yes, I want to fund schools, but our school board is responsible for fixing these problems. We are hemorrhaging teachers, and it's not just about money. No teacher I've ever met says they would quit because they weren't getting paid enough money. And not only that, all districts, even high-paying districts, are hemorrhaging teachers right now. There's a reason for that. But that being said, there's redundancies, fraud, waste, and abuse. I've investigated, I've FOIA'd, I've found it. So the bottom line is our school board is not using our money, in my opinion, wisely. And that is why our children and teachers will continue to experience the same problems and same issues over time, and taxpayers will continue to pay to pay a higher bill. And just quickly, I would just like to say that I also agree that we have a serious problem in our library system that needs to be addressed. And before we go ahead with funding. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Garrett Folks, District 2.
Good evening. My name is Garrett Folks, and currently I am a junior at King William High School and the SCA Vice President. I would like to speak with you regarding virtual learning classes at the high school. Because of our county's teacher shortage, this year 27 classes are being taken online or virtually at the high school. It should be noted that all foreign language classes are virtual. As a county, we pay for 186 high school students to be enrolled in these classes. The majority of these classes are asynchronous learning environment. What that means is that a teacher makes an instructional video and students watch the posted video at a different time and try to learn. It is really tough trying to teach yourself by watching videos. There have been several students that have dropped virtual classes this year because they just couldn't learn this way. Traditionally, most college-bound students at King William High School were on the advanced diploma track. Virginia offers 2 diploma tracks for high school students, the standard diploma and the advanced diploma. The advanced diploma has a foreign language requirement. There are many students opting out of advanced diploma at the high school now because no one wants to take virtual Spanish or French. I was originally on the advanced diploma track until my French teacher left after my sophomore year because she could make more money bartending and waitressing than she could at the high school. I am here this evening to asking you to please consider fully funding the school's budget proposal. The last thing we need is an even greater teacher shortage and more virtual classes at the school. Thank you for your service to our community and for the time you've given me to speak on here tonight.
Thank you.
Chris Couch, District 5.
May not have heard you, Chris.
Okay, a couple quick comments I had for you guys. First of all, in reviewing the budget, looks like that was done in Excel again. And it just so happens that Edmonds does have a great budgeting tool from one of the Sumter County, Georgia's case studies. The exporting feature for budgets was also a standout aspect of the software. It pulls notes and everything we need to be emailed to the department heads. Said Sumter County's Finance Director, Della Griffin. Any adjustments that are made can be simply imported back into the system.
Is this dealing with the school?
Is dealing with the budget that we're talking about the budget, right?
Yeah.
The budget that was created in Excel.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to the school. Don't you worry.
Stop it for like 5 seconds and then start.
You want to stop it. I won't take the whole time this time.
Okay.
So my point being, it is incredibly efficient, and efficiency is what I wanted to bring up. Not necessarily for this year, but for next year and years going forward. I think the administration needs to be very focused on driving efficiencies in our operations. We're doing nothing but adding people, houses, and the county is growing. And as we grow, we're going to have to be more efficient in how we operate so that we're not continuing to add people to the operation. On the fact about the raises, I'm a little uncomfortable if the county is getting raises and the school teachers are not. And so I would just ask you guys to maybe balance that out. Thank you. Thank you. There might be others that want to speak to because the sheet was like taken very beginning. So you might want to ask if others want to speak at the public comment.
Sarah Heinzman, District 4.
Hi,
Hey.
my name is Sarah Heinzman. I moved here 9 years ago. My children are all in the school system. While I was working in Caroline County and at Aylet Country Day School. While I was working in those schools, even though it was a lot harder for me to schedule things, I kept my children in King William County Public Schools because these were good schools. My kids loved their teachers. They had a great time. They were learning a lot. Many of those teachers are no longer here. They did not leave teaching. They left to go to other school districts that are in our surrounding area. My son is now at Hamilton Holmes Middle School in 6th grade. He spent most of his year in science with a long-term substitute with no knowledge of his science curriculum. By the end of the year, there was someone who came in, but she could only come in every other class period, and they were left to do their work independently in the other class periods. He is currently learning Virtual Virginia Spanish at the middle school. My students from last year are in 6th grade science. I'm learning through a program called Admenta. My son does not remember doing labs in 6th grade science. These students are not getting opportunities to do labs in science. I don't know how we teach science without doing labs. We need teachers in these schools who are qualified to teach the curriculum and provide our children with educational experiences that will promote their learning. Ms. McKinney spoke about how teachers are not feeling valued, but honestly, I'm worried that my children's education is no longer being valued. While these children are in Virtual Virginia classes, we are paying people to stand in the rooms with them and monitor them, while we are also paying Virtual Virginia to teach the courses. So again, my question is, are we providing the best educational experience, and are we using our money wisely? And how are we going to keep the teachers that we have? As you know, we're looking at more shortages again at Quinton. I was expecting that 5th grade might get another teacher. We've got a 4th grade group coming up that is larger. And we are now going to be down a teacher from what the fourth grade has. I don't know that we're going to fill these positions. That is more of a burden on the qualified teachers. So not just at the middle school covering these classes, but supporting teachers that do not have the full qualifications at the elementary level as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all that was on the list.
All right, shortly. Does anyone else like to speak? All right, come ahead. You didn't speak about this, correct? No, you were on something else. Yeah, so I didn't realize there was. All right, come on up. And then, ma'am, I saw you. I'll get you next.
So I hadn't planned to speak until the hearing and seeing the presentation from the administrator and hearing the eloquence and passion of these educators. Sorry, Tim Vaughn, 5th District. So I won't comment on the merits of the specific increases. Those should be evaluated on their individual merits. But I will say, how can you justify redirecting these overages, which, let's drop the euphemism, that's the hard-earned money of your citizens of this county. If you are not 100% confident and comfortable that you are already operating at a high level of efficiency and effectiveness in your day-to-day operations, that you know every penny is soundly justified and spent wisely. I mean, the administrator said he feels like he runs it like a business. I mean, I work for a pretty big company here in Richmond, and I can tell you every time budget season comes around, which is every month for us, we have to talk about efficiencies, effectiveness, how we're going to offset proposed increases. And I didn't see any of that in the presentation. And for you as a board of supervisors, how can you make informed decisions about any of this stuff when you've been shown clear issues with county financial reporting? How can you prioritize? How do you know that, where can you get the money to help pay for some of the increases that are seemingly justified based on what I heard tonight from the educators? If you don't have soundness in your operations, how can you operate effectively? You can't make informed decisions without effective financial reporting. And I don't see it. So I hope you guys really emphasize that going forward and see that on a day-to-day basis, you're running the government like a business. You got to justify things. You got to drive these outcomes. You can't just put platitudes on a website and gloss over them because, yeah, I've never been stared wrong. I'm good. You've got to ask the questions and drive those outcomes. And I'm just not seeing it. And it's very disappointing. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Longest, and I'm the Director of Finance for the school district. The one thing I listened to the call the other day while driving down the road, and I heard where you discussed the $3.9 million surplus that we have. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware that there's a resolution 1928 that was approved on May 20th of 2019 that indicates that the reserve funds can be used for one-time capital purchases. We did not have a reserve fund when I started on July 1 of 2019. July 1 of 2019, I was pushing pennies to make it work. The only reason that the school district has a surplus is because of COVID and URSA funds. And we are having to fund buses. My first board meeting that I ever got to meet many of you was to explain that we had buses that were in desperate need of repair and replacement. This $3 million that you referred to, most of that has come about since the FY21 audit, in which I just got approval to do the entry on that in January of 2023. So I couldn't have used that money prior to that because it wasn't audited. We still don't have, as far as I know, an FY22 audit that gives the surplus, which is closer to $500,000 or $600,000. We have to maintain a surplus to pay for one-time capital needs. You all realize a few years ago when I came to you for an alarm system and then a speaker system, we always have repairs because we put off capital projects. So that's the $3 million. The $900,000 of split levy First of all, that included the FY 22 numbers, which I had to request after that meeting that I heard that we had 900,000 because I wasn't aware of that. 194 of that was approved by you all on February 27th to pay debt service. 180 of that was appropriated last June for us to purchase vehicles that we are still waiting on them to come in. And then I know in FY 23, I'm going to have an appropriation and Ms. Brown will work on for radios and audit fees. So that 900,000 that you all claim that we have sitting somewhere, which many of you have also referred to as slush fund to some of our parents, that 900,000 is down to 400,000, which is all where we come to you and need things from time to time. But the 3 million, many of that didn't come about until we've gone in through the FY 21 and 22 audits. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear on that, and that resolution 1928 says I can only come to my board and your board for one-time capital purchases. Salaries are ongoing purchases in which I cannot fund with one-time funds because we will be in this situation again next year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, no one else, I don't think, is. All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing.
Well, look, we've obviously got some more work that we need to do to finalize numbers. I'll say, and I've been consistent with this for a long time. I don't like leaving school short. When asked the other day how I wanted to handle this, I said that I'd like to find a way to get them.
Can we stop until they leave and stop talking?
Turn this off. Go ahead.
Well, anyways, I had said that, my preference would be to find a way to fund, fully fund their ask to the extent that we get the raise done on their end without affecting it on our end. And that's the work I'd still like to do, to try to accomplish those two things as priorities. But that's me.
I would just like to say that 4 of the supervisors didn't agree with you. So that's all I have to say.
All right, anything for Ed?
I'm interested in one of the citizens' comments about $2 million for broadband. I'd like to ask that citizen if he'd be willing to sacrifice and make a symbolic protest to all points. I'd be glad to bypass your home. Thousands of others want broadband and need broadband.
All right,
So I'll be glad to do that.
Mr. Greenwood, anything?
Yes, I stated, I never said we weren't gonna fund the teachers' raise. Like I said, this all gets blown out of proportion, and it's happened before. We brought this up before at school, but these citizens don't know this. The stuff that we appropriate for the school board, we tell them what we think they want them to do, but what they do with it is totally different. Mr. Earhart knows that too from previous boards. Last year, they went against us to pay salaries for exorbitant 14% raises for people that we're still paying for because he's still on contract, and we're paying it. It is true.
Hey, let's not get in the vacuum.
That's right. And I'm saying weren't gonna not pay it. You're deciding not to cut. We've cut as much as we can too. And I'm saying I was making a motion to use that fund to pay for the teachers' raises. But even if we do that, we're not responsible for doing it because the school board does what they want. So now I don't even know if I'm gonna do that. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to give it the increase specifically for the raises. But like I said, that's not up to us. We can say that, but it might not be what happens.
All right. Moving forward. Our next item is some unfinished business that we directed the folks to go away and try to negotiate. It's resolution 2308, Mr. John W. Foley, and I think his wife Ruby is, both are here. Come on up. And it's not a public hearing. We're just gonna let y'all speak as to what you've worked out or not worked out.
Hey, good evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, we submitted, an update to you guys with all of the,
I've read all that and
okay,
I guess since you're mentioning that, what are the two items you didn't agree on?
sure. So one is, somebody checking people at the door. But we did hire somebody full-time to be available. We were gonna have somebody that's on site checking people as they come in. The other, forget me, what was the other?
The other was a review period controlled by the neighbors. That was something we had talked about, but we ultimately decided it would be quite disruptive.
Anything else you'd like to add at this point?
No, I think the only thing missing from the update was that I did meet with Mr. Bondurant yesterday and just confirmed that we were on the same page as far as all those items are concerned. So, and he's here tonight.
I know.
Is Mrs. Graham out there?
Yeah, she's here.
I was just wondering where she is. I'm not seeing her. Oh, okay. Can I ask you something? We spoke earlier and you were talking about maybe putting a clause in this conditional use permit for a yearly review. Would y'all be objected to that if it was a yearly review pending complaints?
I guess it's conditional already, right? And there's the opportunity for any kind of complaint to come in and those would be reviewed. So I don't know why we would need to install another review period.
She just, I've never heard of it. She mentioned it prior to the meeting.
Yeah, it was,
So-
it was something that was discussed. And as we went through all the items, it was the one that we said.
So is this something that you would not agree to as a condition?
Yeah, I don't think it's something that we wouldn't ultimately agree to if that's what it came down to. We just don't think it's necessary. So.
Sure, if there's enough complaints, it could still be brought back up and dealt with. Correct?
I think review is built into it if it creates any type of complaint or thing. I mean, I think at this point in time, I've had an opportunity to talk to the applicants a couple of times. I've had an opportunity to talk to other members of the planning commission to try to gain some background on it. And I think the important thing here to think about, we talked a lot about the ordinance last time, but the fact of the matter is we have an ordinance. Okay, we adopted the ordinance that creates the conditional use permit for this use. At this point in time, they're not only complying with that conditional use permit ordinance, but they're exceeding compliance with that conditional use permit ordinance. And so, the purpose of a conditional use permit is to allow neighbors some input on it, but the basis of denial isn't solely on whether or not the entire neighborhood gets behind it. It's based on whether or not the applicants have submitted an application that complies in whole with the conditional use permit ordinance as it's written. And I believe in this instance that they are and believe that they're far exceeding it. So
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, actually. This is a very good presentation. I was initially against it. But I think that y'all have gone above and beyond trying to work out something. And if it's 11 of the 13 conditions, I couldn't, I would have to vote in favor of it.
You won't allow the others to speak.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, Travis pretty much voiced his opinion.
The other
so-
two folks, whoever's here, I couldn't see. Mr. Bonner.
My name is Elliot Bondurant, and Mr. Foley is correct. He and I did meet yesterday. I had sent him an email. We had emailed back and forth. I had requested 13 different items to address, and they have agreed on 11 of them. I think y'all have addressed sort of one of the others that they didn't agree to, which was the review. And the other one, we've had a conversation about, they're going to provide me the name of a contact person locally, that if there is an issue, I can contact them right away. Because one of the things that they live out of town, and that was an issue that I had. So
I think they'd like to know, Rick, if something's going on.
So you know, they've addressed the concerns that I had.
Okay.
Thank you
Okay.
for
Thank
that.
you, sir. Man,
Hello, I'm Sybil Rose
you can pull it down.
and I own the property next to it and across the road, and I still feel like this ordinance needs more details for enforcement that the planning commission needs to look into more thoroughly. I think it's difficult now that there's no fines involved if these activities go anyway. But it still looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, is there a limit of 6 adults for this? It's still today being advertised for 12, right on the VRBO site. So if it's being advertised like that and you're saying 6, it's pretty kind of cut and dry that that this is not in compliance with.
I don't think
What's
it said
suggested?
that. I had the advertisement and I'm looking for it
That's
now.
in here.
Right. Well, I think it's important for someone, to be following up on this other than the neighbors. I mean, I'm still against it. There's just no benefit to me or the county from what I can tell, and there's still no occupancy tax, and I think that's something that should be looked into too.
That's
So-
being looked in.
We are.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
We did bring this up at the planning commission again, even though we were asked not to get the result. And I'd like Sherry to maybe brief us on what we decided. And that is, I think, if the ordinance, we are going to relook at the ordinance, like I said, that is for future issues of this ordinance. This has to be done on the way the ordinance is written now. And I'll let you finish it.
So that is one thing we are going to be discussing at our work session next Tuesday. Is looking at the short-term rentals. We are also going to be addressing the transient tax and where we need to go from there on collecting tax. But another thing that we're looking at, and that's why I brought up one of the conditions, is doing an annual renewal, and a lot of localities do that. They still require a CUP approval, but they do an annual renewal. And they look at, have there been complaints throughout the year? And if there have, then they do not renew it. And there's a 1-year period before they can reapply.
It says 6.
Yeah.
All right. Gentlemen, anything further? Do we have a
Mr. Chairman, I
motion?
make a motion that we approve this.
Second.
I don't think it'd be further. All right.
Mr. Greenwood,
Aye.
Mr. Garber,
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski.
Aye.
Chairman Hodges.
All right. All right.
Thank you. Great night. Thanks.
All right. All right, next item that we have is explicit book rating discussion, Tom Shepard. Evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. How are you? Members of the board? Tom Shepley, I'm with the library. Mr. Ashcraft asked me to come to answer questions that you may have.
All right, I guess I'll start then. I guess the number one thing, and I'm not quite sure how you do it. How would you rate the books? I know you can make sections and put them in, but is there a rating system?
There is not a rating system. I think that's one of the calls that you've heard from folks, and we've heard it at the library board meetings as well. to create one. Most people are referring to a rating system that's like the MPA system, the motion picture system. And one of the things that's different in this case is that those systems are really implemented by the producers and the distributors of the material. They're not implemented at your local movie theater. So if you go to a theater in West Point, they might come up with their own. They may say, well, there's an A and a B and a C and a D. And then you go to Richmond and they use PG, PG-13, etc. There isn't that kind of rating system for all these other materials.
Yes, my second question is, if you had a rating, how would you implement it with all the books that you have now?
That would be also a very good question. We've got over 200,000 books. If you were trying to define something, I guess I don't really know. Would you define a set of vocabulary? This word is not okay, but this word is. And then I guess you'd have to try to have people that would look to see what words are in them and then determine that. The problem for us as a public library with that is that the standard for making that determination in the United States with the First Amendment really rests with you or I or any other reader. In other words, you know what you're interested in, and I know what I'm interested in. And so I can't really say that a book is going to be okay for you because I'm not you. I can say that a book will be okay or not okay for my children. I also can't do that for your children because you know your children better than I do, and you're the one who's responsible for them.
So Mr. Chair, if I may. So when, say, a new book is purchased, it's no process whatsoever before that becomes available, no review.
There is a review. We're looking for materials that are going to be popular, that have been reviewed by people who actually know the literature and can place it sort of on a continuum, whether the book is going to be appropriate for libraries, for the public or not. But there are people that do that for a living. They are published reviews, and we go by that.
I just can't help but ask the question. The books that were mentioned tonight, I'm sure you had someone complained about them. They are clearly not for young children. Did these books remain on the shelf?
These books have remained on the shelf. I think you need to understand a lot more about the First Amendment before you make a judgment that they should be removed.
Mr. Shepley, I'm not. You don't have to get defensive with me. Well, we're talking about young children, well below the age. I don't even know whether maybe the First Amendment does apply to them, but there's a right and wrong here too. So to answer my question, these books were brought to somebody's attention, and even today, someone can go and check them out. Yes or no?
People have taken excerpts like they have tonight. I couldn't hear all of the meeting. I was outside, and they've read from them. Okay. There is a formal reconsideration process. None of the titles that I heard tonight have been requested for reconsideration, but they would likely stay. And they are in lots of different libraries across the country. Some of the ones that were mentioned as beacons of light tonight, I believe. Okay. Many of these have been on the shelves for years, but you're hearing people complain about them now, last few months.
Honestly, I would have a problem. I don't have children, but I would have a problem if they could walk into a library. I assume that some of these books, even though we're talking about hardback books, are probably also available through your e-service.
Some of them are.
So, to a certain degree, parents are responsible, but, you know, back in the day when I was a kid, it was such a thing as items being segregated, like X-rated tapes. You would go into a VHS store, that would be a physical second room, adults only could go in.
Mr. Garber, the government is held to a different standard than your video store. The video store has every right to be able to censor materials. The government does not. And the public library is part of the government.
That is correct. I was just explaining that the decision on content is not one that is before the Board of Supervisors currently. That is the decision for the library board. It's funding partners, one of which is the Board of Supervisors, but the decisions before the board are not related specifically to the content. I think this conversation has been had for the purposes of budget decisions, getting information from a partner agency, but the content decision is not one that this board is going to be.
Well, I understand that, but is he correct in the fact that they cannot determine what ages can view this material, check it out, take it home?
A government agency can place reasonable restrictions, time, place, manner restrictions on content. Those are subject to challenge, like any decision, on a constitutional right. But that, again, it's not specifically a decision for this Board of Supervisors, but it is possible to place reasonable time, place, manner restrictions on First Amendment activity.
I think it was more of a push, bringing it to us dealing with the budget. Because that's what we do control. Anything else, Mr. Chuck?
This is obviously a very highly charged issue, and not just here. This is happening nationwide right now. I think anytime that you're looking at whether or not a piece of something, the full context is needed. And I certainly don't have the full context on any of the materials that were brought to us tonight. Those are pretty thick books. I know my 9-year-old isn't reading books that thick right now, so I would have a hard time thinking that 9-year-olds are going and seeking them out. But again, it's definitely it's more nuanced and less black and white than was presented, I would think, and would require more careful thought and study than one discussion period and one evening would allow.
I'd just like to ask one more thing. Are the other localities in the Pamunkey Regional Library concerned also?
I understand that they've had a meeting. I wasn't invited to the meeting.
Hanover had not mentioned defund.
I've not heard that from
That's the
them.
rumor I heard.
At the,
It may be a rumor home.
at the December PRL meeting I happened to go to, there were probably a dozen or more. They had held, and at the Atlee Library had held a banned book week. Which really.
Display.
Yeah. Which was, I don't think it was at an age appropriate specific location. And parents and grandparents and read extracts that were far more explicit than what we heard tonight, far more. And Mr. Shepley, the most radical thing that could happen by a group that is First Amendment centric, someone could easily come in and sue the county. Is that a correct statement?
I think they would sue the library.
The library, okay.
If we are moving things around or removing them from.
I don't think
library.
anybody advocated burning or banning. It's just the location and access is the issue, correct?
That is still First Amendment. If you move them, there's case law that states that moving them places an undue burden on the intended user.
My 11-year-old grandson is coming up here at the end of May. And if I took him over to the library And they're curious. They walk around. I would be seriously concerned. They live in Florida, which may be a little more liberal, but I don't think our daughter is advocating for her 11-year-old sons to seek out that kind of material. We need to do something.
If I may.
Sure.
When parents sign the library card application, it states that they are responsible for the use of it. It states that if you're an adult, you're responsible for the use of it. We follow that up with a letter to the parent or guardian of every underage card holder. And it states in more detail that they are responsible for that. And that has been the library's policy procedure for probably 30 years. And it works because you are the one that gets to control what you're looking at. Mr. Hodges gets to control what he is looking at. The folks that we're hearing from are trying to limit access to other people. And that's where it becomes censorship. If I may, hardly anyone would restrict any of their First Amendment rights as it applies to themselves, right? However, they may be tempted to constrain the application of those rights to others whose beliefs or behaviors they find distasteful. And it's easy to stand up for the First Amendment when you agree with what someone says. But the real test is standing up for everyone's First Amendment rights. And we all have First Amendment rights, even children that are underage.
You had mentioned something about there was a process. What process would parents have to do to try to take a book and put it on some list? Where can they go? You said that there was.
They wouldn't put it on some list. They would have to ask us to reconsider the position that the book has in the collection.
That they can do that, or they have done it. I don't know.
They can do that.
Okay.
It does not happen terribly frequently. I suspect it may be happening more frequently as a tool for some of the folks to try to use that are having these concerns. And we treat that kind of like your assessment process. If I don't disagree with the assessment, you'll go back and you'll do the checklist. You'll see if all the right data was used, the right process was used, right? And then you'll say, Mr. Shepley, that's still your bill. I can't use that process to say, I don't want to have a tax bill, eliminate this. That's not kind of how that works, right? So we reconsider what we have done. Did we follow the right procedures? Is there evidence that that's a book that's a reasonable choice for the community? And we have 150,000 people in the service population in 4 counties. There's a lot of different interests in that community.
So, Mr. Shapley, if those books were not available, it would not infringe on anyone's rights, right?
If they were not available,
what would have to happen to have a better screening process of what is being offered in the library?
Are you suggesting that there should be sort of a white list and a black list of what materials and
I would
ideas
just
are
like
collected?
a little bit better review from, and Ed mentioned even more of what he saw at the Hanover Library. It's obvious these books should not be in the hands of kids. I'd like to see, if it is possible, what the process would be when a book is purchased, to have some kind of review before it's offered. I think the other localities would probably agree to that. I mean, I can't speak for them. That's what I feel about it.
I think you do that, but you've got so many opinions on what is appropriate. And
These books that they refer to tonight were not appropriate.
I
Yeah,
couldn't believe they were in there. I guess I need to go to the library. I haven't been in the library since I read the preschool. So it's been a while.
Problem is, whose values would be that moderate level of reviewing? We've got some far left.
No, that's
Fringe.
why I'm thinking.
you know, I think that anybody that has children, those books that were talked about tonight, and maybe those books that you were referring to in the Hanover Library, I think anybody with, regardless of, their opinions, would think that they would not, those particular books would not have been acceptable for children.
All people. I can't agree with that.
No.
Because I've dealt with
Can't specify.
pedophiles and everything else in my career, so.
Well, certainly if you have someone in the library, you would know what type of person they are if they are physically reviewing the books. I thought that maybe it was like you said, whoever it is, the publisher or whatever, they do offer some recommendations or whatever content is in that book.
Not content, but age level. Publishers and authors are the ones that are determining that generally. The book reviews that we use reinforce that.
But again, they're trying to sell. Correct.
The book review folks are not trying to sell it. They're being published in different literature.
So Mr. Ashcraft is actually attending a PRL subject tomorrow. I would suggest we get together our next meeting and review what he brings back. I don't,
And I don't have a problem with doing that at all, but I got a feeling we're gonna be in that same First Amendment deal. No matter what we do, other than, and you know what we went through when we got the budget, defunding, but we'd probably be tortured. But it's on our plate and you attend that and let us all know. Sure. Anybody got anything for Mr. Shepherd? Nope. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
All right, Ms. Branch, I think you're up next with resolution 23-24 FOIA policy and fee update.
The county's FOIA policy and fee schedule was adopted in 2016 and has never been updated since. Changes to Virginia FOIA require an update to the policy. The fee schedule currently does not allow for the fair and equitable reimbursement of public expenses to the county and taxpayers and requires an update as well. The proposed FOIA policy and fee schedule has been reviewed by the county attorney. There are a couple changes to the one that was originally sent to you. Both of them are in the cost area. In the staff time, the second one for legal review, the attorney suggests that we would charge the hourly rate of the FOIA officer for the time that is spent for legal review, which is obviously significantly less than the hourly rate of the legal review. And then county finance used a formula that Mr. Hlavin alerted us to and found that the charges for the copying were grossly over what they should be. They used information from the maintenance agreement for our copier machine, the cost of ink, the cost of paper, etc. And it comes out that for color, it would be 6 cents per page instead of 50 cents and 12 cents for double-sided instead of $1. And then also for black and white, instead of 25 cents per page, it seems that the actual cost to the county is 3 cents per page. And while we often don't have anybody who wants copies, it's mostly all email. We still would propose making those changes. And the one other thing that I had forgotten to ask was that if somebody wants records on a thumb drive that they want us to provide, that we would charge them for the thumb drive. And the price that I found on Quill to order them in bulk is $5 for up to 32 gigabytes.
Would that allow, well, up to 32 gigabytes
Of information, yeah. If they needed more than that, then I guess we'd have to give them,
All right, question right off the
Sure.
bat. You're the FOIA first.
yes,
You have a substitute, correct?
yes. The county administrator and
y'all-
deputy county administrator are the substitutes if I'm not here.
Salaries are not the same. is what I'm getting.
Correct.
So if you happen to hit when the county administrator was doing it or.
You would still only charge it at the FOIA officer's rate. Mhm. And right now, the way that it's charged, it's very unfair to the King William County taxpayer body because they are paying for one person's requests. And it's especially unfair to the taxpayers of King William County when those requests are coming from outside the county and they're having to pay for the time that is spent to fulfill those requests. There are two bills before the House. One is HB 2007, which they say will probably pass. That says that everyone will be required to develop a policy on how charges are calculated, which this would cover. And then the other thing that we are currently in the process of doing is engaging Just FOIA. That's an online FOIA processing application. People would go to the website. That's where they'll fill out their request. That way it would eliminate all of the threats that are coming to me in emails because they would just put their request on their website and then county staff can all go through the process and the board, anything that, whose information is being asked for, and they can put it into Just FOIA. And then once it's all ready and reviewed, it sends the requester a notice saying your information is ready for download and review, and they can go and get it.
Can you redact?
You can redact. And the biggest thing right now, we talk about offices that have one employee in them. The administration office has one employee, that's me. And I have a lot of duties and I'm alone all the time. And these have added so much extra work. I'm here till 10:45 at night, as you can see from the emails you get from me at 10:45 at night. And that's not fair either. And we're more than happy. And we've requested to both of these people to come in. If you can't get the information because you say it's in a format that you don't like, but I'm telling you it is physically impossible, no matter what the contract for Edmund says, we can't do it. Come in, sit down. I practically begged this person to come in and sit down with the finance director to look at her Edmonds, to sit down with her so she can show him there's nothing being hidden. There's nothing being withheld. And also, the other people who keep saying, we had an illegal meeting of the Board of Supervisors and they have an eyewitness. And they claim that this was on February 10th and that Mr. Ashcraft and 4 members of the Board of Supervisors were in a meeting. Their eyewitness must need glasses because Mr. Ashcraft was home ill that entire week. It was a normal weekly meeting that the county administrator calls with the chair and the vice chair, which happens usually on Thursday or Friday before the Monday meeting where you all review the agenda. That's 2 members, not a quorum, not called by the chair, but called by the county administrator. But no one ever asked that question. And FOIA is not answering questions. FOIA is for public records. So when you ask for something, like emails about abolishing offices, there's nothing. It does not exist. It's not being hidden. It doesn't exist. If it existed, I would have given it to you. It does not exist. And one of the best things I started to say about Just FOIA is that with the emails, when I pull an email search, which can give me 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 emails, I want every email that has the word treasurer in it for the last year and a half. That's millions and millions of emails.
Too broad anyway.
Correct. And right now I have to go through every single one. And the only way to do that is to open that PST file within Outlook. And then I have to look at every email. When we get Just FOIA allows you to import that PST file. And then it pulls all of the emails out and puts them in separate, well, I think puts it in one PDF. So then you can go through and you can auto redact, you can go through and redact it, but you don't have to go through and read 10,000 emails by clicking, going through the trash folder, going through this folder, that folder. And the other thing too is that when people ask for something, especially email and documents, if I search under the terms that you've asked me to search under and nothing shows up, there's nothing under those search terms. That's the long and short of it. I cannot create a document that does not exist. I cannot fabricate something out of thin air. Nor should I be expected to, because in that case,
Doesn't require it.
I would be breaking the law.
Ms. Branch, at this current pace, would you recommend either a part-time or even a full-time to handle FOIA requests?
We had one request where the cybersecurity person told us we would have to hire a full-time person for 3 months just to fulfill this request.
So the answer is probably yes.
You can't just hire somebody to do FOIA though, because they have to understand the law. They have to know what they're looking for when they look for records.
And that would be someone that we get trained or
Right.
has experience, so.
But yes, it would definitely help to have a part-time person who could do something, which is why you all don't have any minutes beyond January 23rd, because I have not been able to even look at the notes that I've taken at any meetings because I'm fulfilling FOIA requests and serving the Board of Equalization and working on the reassessment. So my request is that you would pass resolution 2324 with, well, I guess it would be 2324 R. And under staff time, the second one, the actual hourly rate of the FOIA officer for initial legal review of public records. And then I did send out and post to the website a revised portion of the copy printing producing records with those lower costs of 6 cents, 12 cents for color, 3 cents, 6 cents for black and white, and then $5 for up to 32 gigabyte thumb drive.
And all of those that are in the chain.
Yes,
cost.
yeah, they would be, I put in an R. And the FOIA Council has opinions on court costs. The Supreme Court of Virginia held that a public body can charge for the review of public records to assure that those records are responsive and are not exempt from disclosure and may be disclosed without violating other provisions of law. I have done this maybe twice. I've asked Max to double check something that I've done to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. If I have any question in my mind that the information is either not relevant, redactable, personal, whatever, I contact the FOIA Council and get their opinion, and I contact a county attorney and get their opinion, which is why we have charges for the county attorney reviewing FOIA requests. The county administrator has also repeatedly invited Mr. Wade to come and sit down with him to discuss all of his issues and his questions, and he has not done that either. Mr. Ashcraft puts his personal email address out there for anybody to contact him at any time. He is more than happy to sit down and talk with anybody.
I'm sure they'll repeat this. A good story is much better than.
Of course. And you know, your FOIA allows you to come in, you can come in and look at it if you want to. You can have it sent to you by email. We can make you copies of it. And sometimes with some requests where we can't even figure out what it is you want anymore because you've made so many and we're so confused, we don't know what in the heck you want. Just come in. Come in and get it all cleared up. And hopefully the FOIA policy will help with that. The other issue that we have, and it's also in this resolution, is the payment of FOIA fees, because the treasurer does not tell me if someone has paid their FOIA fees, nor does she have to. It's not her job. It was very simply asked that you pay the FOIA officer so that the FOIA officer can then fill out the form that needs to be filled out, because that's the county process, and give the check to the treasurer. That way I can mark paid so that when you ask me next time, I don't look like an idiot and tell you I don't have to answer you because you didn't pay your bill.
It's on line 135.
Yes.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
A second. Any further discussion? Ms. Brand?
Mr. Garber,
Aye.
Mr. Moran,
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski, Mr. Greenwood,
Aye.
Chairman Hodges.
Aye. All right, and Mr. Ashcraft?
Mr. Chairman, the lateness of the hour, my report is contained in your packet. If any members have any questions, I'm happy to answer. If not, review at your leisure and then we can discuss. A lot of dates on there for April and obviously some notes and things that I generally cover.
All right. Mr. Moore? We're at that point.
Wait a minute, I think it was number one last.
I'll be number one.
There you
Any
go.
problem with it. Big crowd tonight. I appreciate everybody coming. I appreciate everybody from the schools coming. All the teachers. And I think it's a misconception out there. Mr. Greenwood touched on it a while ago. We're not denying the teachers a raise. We allocate money to them and they use that as they see fit. So basically, if the teachers don't get a 5% raise, that's on the schools. And it is still my understanding that $3.9 million can be used. It is basically fundamentally a one-time thing, but it's other things within the budget that they could use to fund the one-time fee and use the other part, the remainder for the raise to the teachers. You know, they came out in force tonight and either they don't want to hear that or maybe I'm misinformed. Am I misinformed, Mr. Ashcraft?
That's an accurate assessment.
Put him in mode.
He's in them, but they're blaming him for everything. But anyway, that's it. Appreciate everybody coming and
You ready to be
Okay,
second?
I'm ready. I would like to commend the folks that are picking up trash. Route 30 looks so much better. And hopefully that'll confer over to Route 360 and Quentin Church was a mess. I understand that. So if this continues, this county will start looking a little bit better soon. Can't stress that enough. As Mr. Garber said, I'm concerned about this reserve funding not being used. It's a shouldn't use it, but it sounds to me that this is becoming a rather critical period of time for teachers and something needs to be done tomorrow. And I would suggest that that be tapped into. We will always cover any issues and needs that the school has. During my time, we've never let you down and we'll continue to not let you down. Thank you.
Ms. Scott?
No, nothing.
Really? Mr. Green?
I am exhausted. I am in a not insignificant amount of pain over
It's a
here in my
long
left
day
leg,
from
so
being sick.
my brain is.
I started about 6 this morning, but go ahead. Thanks, Mr. Green.
Yes, and like I said, like you said, everybody else is all upset too, but we're citizens too. We're taxpayers of this county too. And like I said, I don't have children, but that doesn't mean anything. I pay more for the children of this county than most people do because I don't have any deductions for children. And we've always helped the children of the county. And I take offense to people at the school board sending out all those emails, just like they did with the library, just like they did last year another year with West Point. And I wanted to bring up West Point kept their level funding and get their raise. So it's not just us. We both need to work on it. Like I said, I was willing to make a one-time adjustment this time, as we many times in the past few weeks have talked about it. The way that the funding is structured because of this split levy is weird. And like, well, the finance director for the schools came up. She didn't have anything to do with that, coming up with that money and saving it and all that stuff. It's like Travis explained eloquently last week. It's all because it was structured wrong. We haven't got the formula just right. So more has been going into it that shouldn't, because we haven't got it. It shouldn't be anything over there. But anyway, we have that money there now, whether it's 900,000 or 3 million or 4 million or $25 million. I was gonna make a motion, I still am, to use that money one time. And I think, can we do it anyway without there? Does it have to be the school board brought to us to say, ask us to use it, or can we say, we want that to be used to pay the full amount of the team? But like I said, we can say it, but once we give it to them, they don't have to do that.
It is correct when the
I
money,
know, and that's what people don't know either.
when the money is appropriated to the schools, that
We
is
have
the
no control
I
over
think
it.
at the end of it right there, saying
Yeah,
it's
so,
appropriate.
but that's what I'm willing to do. And like I said, I take offense to saying that we, and unfortunately, and I'm not picking on anybody, but the teachers that have jumped the gun and quitting and putting in all this stuff, we never decided that we weren't gonna give them the 5% raise. Everybody just assumed that, so. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thanks everybody for coming. It was a lot of people. I take offense to that group that comes in, because that's a paid group. They're all paying that consultant to do all this stuff. Why don't they pay them to do something constructive? But that, that's another bad issue. Thanks everybody for coming.
And they're paying him to write the letters, and then they pass them out, but we know all that. We knew that from day one on. And I agree with the 3.9, whichever part of it. It's been done before, don't act like it hadn't been. And I think it's something we need to do at this point in time. Talking about school buses, we paid for them out of our regular fund before, you know, when they were short and when they were hurting for buses. So it's happened before, it'll happen again. But, and we have always done everything we could to the school. And education's a big thing. Talking about the teachers are leaving, look around. I mean, you can't get somebody to flip a hamburger. So it's not just teachers, it's everywhere. But anyway, yeah, and I gotta speak proudly of West Point, 2 years level funding. And they gave the raise this year. And I think that's about it, except I need a motion, and I know Travis don't want to do this.
Mr. Chairman, I'll pick up for Mr. Miskowski.
All right.
Make a motion to convene closed meeting in accordance with section 2.2-3711 alpha 1 of the Code of Virginia to consider a personnel matter involving the appointment of individuals to boards and commissions.
Second.
There's part 2 to that.
There's a second part.
And the performance and promotion of a specific public employee.
Second.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski. Mr. Greenwood.
Aye.
Mr. Garber.
Aye.
Chairman Hodges.
That was a week. All right, I call this meeting back to order.
Mr. Chairman, we reconvene in open session.
Second.
Chris.
Mr. Miskowski.
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood.
Aye.
Mr. Garber.
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
Chairman Hodges.
Mr. Chair, I move SR1.
Second.
Mr. Greenwood.
Aye.
Mr. Garber.
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski.
Aye.
Chairman Hodges.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, adjournment.
Second.
Chris.
Aye.
Mr. Garber.
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski. Mr. Greenwood.
Aye.
Chairman Hodges.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.